This is something I've always wanted to do. How many of us haven't always watched the Naruto series and thought, if I were there, I would have done things differently? Well, I have too, and I decided to make a series about it. So I hope you'll sit right back, because I'm gonna spin up a tale of if the Amagi were in Naruto. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Before we begin though, we need to make a character to represent us. Let's see, what should we name them? Well, I'm gonna make him a boy, probably about the same age as Naruto, but what about that name? Well, there are many we could choose from, but for now, let's just call them Ethan. That seems fair. Next, we'll decide what we want our character's special jutsu to be. I don't want it to be overpowered, but I do want it to be something special. While I'm tempted to just go the Sharingan route because I love the Sharingan, I think it would be too cliche. So let's give them a hidden jutsu or a Kekai Genkai that isn't often used. Or maybe something totally new. I kinda like Guren's Crystal Nature transformation, so we'll say Crystal Release is the Kekai Genkai. Not just because it's a useful technique, but because I've always had a thing for pretty rocks. I collect them all the time. If it's an awesome looking rock, particularly if it's crystalline, it ends up in my collection. So that makes sense. And to keep from overly messing with the Naruto lore with our mere presence, I'll simply say our OC, like Naruto and Sasuke, was orphaned, but that it wasn't traumatic and we simply don't remember our family. This should give us a good neutral starting place, and could even give us some character development down the line if we seek a new arc about finding our family, though that's only an option and not a definite thing. I'm rather pleased with this character. How about you? Alrighty, let's jump right in. I wake up in the morning, not too long after the sun rises. Not particularly because I wanted to, but because I had to. If it had been up to me, I would have stayed in bed until at least noon. I'm a bit lazy that way, but what is life if not to be enjoyed? That being said, I do dream of becoming a shinobi one day, so that means I have to make sacrifices, and thus my alarm clock is waking me up at the very crack of dawn. I sit up in bed, stretch with a yawn, and proceed to crack my knuckles. I slip out from under the covers and grab something to eat. I've never really been a big breakfast kind of guy, and because I don't like cooking for myself, I tend to eat ready-made foods or easily prepared things. For today, I chose Tobirama O's. I poured myself a bowl and put in the milk. Grabbing a spoon, I head back to my bed and sit down on it, turning on the TV. My apartment was a one-room apartment that had a small kitchen across the way. It wasn't too far removed of what you might expect of your average hotel room, but a high-quality hotel room, like something you might get at a resort. The bed was a fold-out that turned back into a couch, but I was always too lazy to turn it back into a couch unless I was expecting company. Turning on the TV, I begrudgingly chose the news as opposed to the cartoons that were on. Sitting there, I ate my cereal in silence as the news anchors began to explain world events that had transpired in Konoha and in the greater world while I'd been asleep. As usual, nothing that great happened. Why do I even watch this stuff? I wondered as I put my bowl into the sink. Answering myself in my head, I knew that it was because it was my duty to stay informed as a shinobi. Information was as valuable as money and as dangerous as any kunai. To equip oneself with knowledge was as necessary as a shuriken or scroll. Heading to the bathroom, I took a quick shower and then brushed my teeth. Grabbing my clothes, which consisted mostly of a simple loose-fitting shirt and some shorts, I began to make my way out of my apartment. Standing on the balcony, I saw the last moments of dawn as sun broke the horizon. Looking out over the village, I remembered why I loved my apartment. The view was amazing. Looking over the village toward the monument that served to remember the previous 3 Kage and venerate the current, I reflected on my desire to one day become Hokage. Truth be known, it was a common dream, and it really did seem unlikely that a nobody who didn't even know his own clan name would ever make it to that position. Not that I didn't believe it could happen, I was simply a realist, and I came to understand that while the seat of the Hokage was everything a guy could want, it was really just a position to help support the village, and I could do such as a shinobi of any rank. Looking down, I placed my hand in the Magatama necklace I wore, green agate, one of the best stones I'd ever made. It seemed to glow gently with my chakra. It was another day for the academy, and as I took in the cool morning air, I was filled with vigor to start the day. Stepping up onto the railing of my balcony, I stood on the very tips of my toes, my hands held out as if I were absorbing the very sunlight itself for energy. I jumped forward in a leap of faith, landing in the hay below. Honestly, the merchant who had no other choice but to park his product there hated me, but I just couldn't resist. An avid game player, I was sure to make the cry of an eagle every time I did it before being chased off by the older farmer preparing to peddle his goods. I would run for it with a chuckle, looking behind me. No harm done. Hay was hay. My grandiose entrance didn't hurt it any. Making my way through the village, I went toward the academy, where I waited outside with the rest of the class. So many unique faces, each one with their own name and personalities. They helped remind me that I wasn't the only one in the world, something that I often forgot the moment I got home. It was a lonely life indeed, but considering that I basically lived in the ideal bachelor pad for free, it wasn't so bad. I knew it could have been far worse. Looking around, I knew I wasn't the only one either. Many of the kids nearby had lost family due to the Third Shinobi World War, and some after. Some were tortured by it. Me, I simply didn't remember my family. It hurt, yeah, but it wasn't something that caused me to lose sleep. After all, my life now was as it had always been. Don't pity me, I'm not really looking for a shoulder to cry on, it's just another day, taking life by the ear and steering my future wherever I wanted to go. Looking over, I saw Sasuke sitting there, the edgy boy, the definition of cool. He always rubbed me the wrong way. I never could find myself able to make friends with people who didn't smile, not that I didn't try, they just felt so insincere. Well, in most cases they did. Sasuke had a reason for never smiling, so I cut him some slack, but that didn't make being friends with him easy. I don't think he really wanted friends. I had no choice really but to oblige him. Then there was Naruto, the outcast, the pariah. Kids talked about him all the time, joking about him, calling him a freak. Frankly, I didn't get it. What was so unusual about this boy that people would try to throw him out like this? Like, it was horrible. I had seen children and adults pick on him the same. Why was that? Was he part of some dishonored clan? Was his father a traitor to the village? To me, that didn't matter much. I didn't know why people hated Naruto. All I knew is that I kinda liked him. He was funny, always joking around, playing pranks. He was a bit of a troublemaker and ended up on the news more than once. Maybe that's another reason why I watched, to see what my classmate might attach to his rap sheet next. Bad news indeed, but he wasn't an evil person. Not that I could tell. He was an orphan too. Considering how he was treated, maybe he was just lonely. Standing out here early, I wondered why we had to do this. If we were here early, why couldn't the schoolmaster be? Tapping my foot, eventually the school was opened and we were allowed to go to homeroom where we would all take our seats. Naruto would be sitting off to the side, and near him was Sakura Haruno. On the other side of the class was Sasuke Uchiha. To the early bird went the worm. Sakura was so passionate about Sasuke that she would basically race to class to sit next to him, and Naruto would race to class to sit next to her. And Sasuke, well, he just looked like he wanted to be left alone. Frankly, I couldn't blame the guy, though the romantic side of me wished that I had even half as much game as he did. Nope, I was cursed with level 3 Skibbity Ohio Riz. Who wrote this script? Anyway, I was just your awkward normie. If this were a shonen anime, I'd likely be one of the background characters who showed up for one episode and only ended up as a cameo later on down the line. That's how it felt, at least. That being said, I wasn't a total washout. I was actually slightly above average with my ninjutsu. I don't know if it was because I was a prodigy or because I was smart, but my chakra control was a good bit above average. I suppose it had to do with my use of crystal release. I was always making new gems, particularly in the shape of a magatama, my favorite shape to make. It was less training, more of a hobby, though I had been working on something that one might consider training, although this was more curiosity than anything. More recently, I'd taken a bit of an interest in sealing jutsu and formulas. I was total garbage at it, but I had managed to advance with just enough that I was able to seal a bit of my own chakra into my magatama, which is why this particular necklace was so special to me. It was the first success I had in doing so. This curiosity was likely what allowed me to excel in most jutsu once I understood how they worked. I was far from the top student, but let's just say I wasn't at the bottom. No, that was Naruto, sadly. Ignored by other kids, ignored by adults, ignored by teachers, he was pretty much left to figure out everything on his own. If he couldn't understand it, he just had to deal, because nobody would explain it to him. The day began with Irika coming into the classroom. There he stood, holding a chart in his hand. "Today is the day of the final exams," he said. "When I call your name, you'll come down and display your mastery over the clone jutsu." I leaned back and relaxed. The clone jutsu was something I mastered a while ago. Due to my love of creating gems, my chakra control was fairly refined, and due to my artist's spirit, I had quite a bit of eye for detail, so I knew I'd get this in the bag. But then again, most of the kids did. Almost all of them it was. "Ethan, it's your turn," Irika-sensei said. I got up from my seat and began making my way down. I stood in front of the class. I realized all the other students were watching me, judging me. I could understand how not everyone might be able to pass. There was some pressure. I was never the best under pressure, which was ironic considering that I made crystals, with crystals being known only to form under intense pressure. I tried to imagine the class in their underwear and immediately regretted the decision. So that being said, I simply took a deep breath and focused on Irika-sensei. I formed a clone of him perfectly. He told me it was good, but he wanted me to make one of myself instead. Closing my eyes, I tried to craft a mental image of myself in my own mind. I saw myself in a mirror like I did so often every day, and then crafted my clone based on it. Irika wrote something down on the paper on his clipboard. "The clone is good, but the image is mirrored." I looked over at my clone and realized that I forgot to flip its traits and sent it out mirrored. Irika then smiled. "Still impressive. Just gotta deal with its mirrored traits. You pass." I sighed with relief. I suppose it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. Normally, I could make a perfect clone, but it must have been because I was being watched that I goofed up. After me, though, was Naruto. Naruto was asked to do the same, and despite not being as shy as me, he failed to do so. It was the most pathetic clone I'd ever seen, but I could tell he was trying. He just seemed to be missing something important. The entire class laughed at him, save a few. I was one of the few who didn't laugh. I felt bad for him instead. It must have been hard to be the laughingstock of the whole day, not to mention Irika informed him that he failed and would need to try again later. That day, he handed us our forehead protectors and told us that we'd be assigned to teams in the upcoming days. I stepped outside. Various kids were showing off their new forehead protectors to their proud parents. I smiled as I watched. I had nobody to show it off to, but that was okay. I was doing this for me, not for anyone else. Looking over though, I saw Naruto sitting on the swing set all alone, watching the whole thing go down. I heard some of the parents notice him and begin to talk about him. They weren't very quiet. Surely Naruto could hear them. They began to walk off with their kids. Me, on the other hand, I was left standing there all alone. I saw Naruto, forlorn and in the silent throes of depression. Unable to help myself, I simply walked over. "What, are you here to gloat?" Naruto asked. I shook my head. "No." I sat down beside him in the grass as the wind gently pushed him from side to side. "This is a peaceful spot," I said to him. "It's quiet, gets just the proper amount of shade and wind. Makes one feel like they're in paradise." "Why are you here?" Naruto asked. It seemed the icebreaker shattered against the ice. Guess I was gonna have to dive straight into conversation. "I came to see if you were okay." Naruto looked confused. "Why does that matter to you? Go away." I didn't move. "Naruto." I tried to start the conversation, but wasn't sure what to say next, so an awkward span of silence ensued while I tried to think up what to say. "I know you're upset, but things will get better. You just gotta try." "Try? I try every semester, but I still get held back. Trying isn't good enough." I went to say something more, but then Mizuki-sensei showed up. "Can I talk to Naruto alone, please?" I wasn't an adult, and I respected Mizuki-sensei, so I got out of the way and let him do as he asked. "I'll talk to you later, Naruto." I began to make my way off. I spent the remainder of the day just enjoying myself, eating out, exploring the village, and playing at the arcade. Going out to get some barbecue for supper, I ended up striking up a conversation with Choji, who invited me to sit with him. We discussed the cuts of meat we were eating, and he said most of it was called trash meat, but he explained to me that it was still delicious, not because of what it was made of, but because of how it was cooked. He said people were like that too, that we're all just trash meat, but we can become gourmet if we're cooked the right way. Amazed by the wisdom of Choji, I decided to ask him more, but he told me I would need to climb the mountain again for another question. Laughing and eating more gourmet trash meat well into the night, I decided to head out. There, I thought I spotted Naruto. He was looking over his shoulder and displaying the stereotypical signs of someone who was about to do something they knew was wrong. Normally, I enjoyed seeing whatever pranks Naruto would come up with, but tonight I knew that nothing good or funny could come from this, so I began to follow him. As I did, I saw him head up to the rooftops, and I followed him further. Trying to stay well out of sight, I watched as he made his way to the Hokage's residence. This was particularly odd. I mean, being an orphan myself, I knew it wasn't uncommon for us to either visit or be visited by Hiruzen, but what was he doing there at night? Something didn't make sense to me. I knew if I was caught, I'd get in big trouble, but the same was true for Naruto, and given that he was already in a depressed state, I didn't want to see him do anything he might regret. So, against my better judgment, I followed him in. When we entered, I saw him move towards something. It was the Scroll of Seals. "What are you doing?" I said as my Magatama necklace began to show light. Naruto looked as if he might jump out of his skin. He turned around to face me. "Nothing." I shook my head. "Doesn't look like nothing. What were you going to do with the Scroll of Seals?" I asked. Naruto looked at it and then down. "Naruto," I asked. Naruto sighed. "I was gonna take it." "Why?" I asked. Naruto looked up. "Mizuki told me that if I stole it, I might be able to learn a jutsu that would allow me to pass the test." I was surprised. "Mizuki told you this? Like, he actually told you to steal it?" Naruto nodded. "He cares about me. He wants me to succeed." I shook my head. "No, Naruto, Mizuki's lying to you. If he cared, he would have taught you the clone jutsu himself, not ask you to do this. This is dangerous, and I think it's also treason to the village." Naruto seemed confused by this. I began to think about it. "I think we need to tell Mr. Hiruzen about this," I said. Naruto shook his head. "No, please, I can't fail this test again. If I fail it again, my dreams of being a shinobi will be dashed." My heart was bleeding for him, but I couldn't let this stand. Something highly illegal was going on here, and was a possible sign of conspiracy. "Naruto, I won't let you fail again. I will personally teach you the clone jutsu. We'll spend all night practicing if we have to, but we have to report this to Hiruzen. If we don't, the village could be in danger." Naruto sat there. "But what if I fail?" "You won't," I told him. "But I might." I shook my head. "No, Naruto, you've got to believe. The process of making a lively clone is to believe in it. You have to care for it, believe in it, craft it with love. Without these things, it ends up like me." As I stood there, I began to understand why Naruto was having a hard time with this. "I believe in you, Naruto," I said. He looked up at me as tears began to roll down his cheeks. I pulled him into a hug. "You're a good shinobi. I know that much. I believe it. I believe in you. But a good shinobi would report this suspicious behavior to the Hokage. So we need to tell Mr. Hiruzen about Mizuki, okay?" Naruto nodded. "Okay." I led him out of the office and we turned ourselves into the guards. They would wake the Hokage and put us into a meeting with him. Naruto was nervous about getting in trouble, but for some reason I was not. I was at peace. I turned to Naruto and put my hand on his shoulder. "Don't be afraid. The truth will set you free." We would be set before the third Hokage, who would ask what we were doing there. I looked to Naruto to see which of us would speak first. He seemed hesitant, so I began. "I was coming home from dinner when I saw Naruto. He seemed to be acting strange, so I decided to follow him. He entered the Hokage's residence, so I trailed him in. There I saw him attempting to snatch the Scroll of Seals, but I stopped him and Naruto then cut me off and began to explain. "I tried to steal the scroll, sir." Hiruzen pinched his tear ducts and let out a stressed groan. Naruto continued. "I was wrong, but I was desperate, sir. I didn't pass my exam today. Again. I wanted to pass, so I sought a way to learn a jutsu that would allow me to pass." "So you came up with the bright idea to steal the scroll?" Hiruzen asked. Naruto shook his head. "No, I didn't." Hiruzen was confused. "Then who did?" "Ethan?" Naruto shook his head. "I was approached by Mizuki, one of the school teachers. He told me that the only way to surely pass the test was if I stole the Scroll of Seals and learned one of the forbidden jutsu." Hiruzen was shocked. "Why would he say that?" It was then that I chimed in. "That's the thing, Mr. Hiruzen. When Naruto told me about it, I got a bad feeling. Isn't stealing that scroll treason?" Hiruzen nodded. I thought about it. Is it possible that Mizuki wanted to get Naruto into trouble? Or maybe take the scroll for himself? Hiruzen thought about this. "It is possible, but do you have any proof that Mizuki was going to do any of this?" Naruto shook his head. "Then we can't rightfully bust him. We need proof that he's doing these things, elsewise we'll simply have to believe that it was you acting on your own, Naruto." Naruto seemed to get nervous about this. Then I spoke up. "Why not let Naruto steal the scroll?" Hiruzen looked at me with a bit of a confused look on his face. "Do you hear yourself, Ethan?" I nodded my head. "I do, sir. I'm not talking about a real scroll. Let's give Naruto a fake one, like the real one, and then set him loose. We'll see what Mizuki decides to do. Hiruzen thought about this and then agreed to the idea, so we all prepared. We would give Naruto a large empty scroll and would each follow behind and in disguise. As we waited, Mizuki eventually showed up to take the scroll. This proved Naruto's story. With that said, Hiruzen would step out and have Mizuki arrested, and Naruto would be cleared due to his honesty and his stressed state that caused him to make a bad decision. I would take Naruto home. "Thank you, Ethan," he told me. "You stopped me from making a mistake." I would smile at him and tell him it was okay. "We're not done yet," I said. "I'm gonna teach you to make a clone." Naruto shook his head. "You've already done enough for me. I won't make you do more." That's when I told him that I'd already promised to teach him and that I wasn't gonna go back on my word. I would take Naruto in and together we'd work on making clones together. We would work all night until we both passed out from exhaustion. We would wake up later on as the morning sun had already broken the horizon. Naruto realized he was late. He got his shoes on and dashed out the door. I would follow. He got there right as they were about to cancel his personal exam. Being allowed to enter with him, I would take a seat at the back of the class to observe quietly. As Naruto stood there, I would offer him a thumbs up, coaxing a smile. This was it, the culmination of our work. "I believe in you, Naruto," I said, drawing an angry eye from one of the proctors. Irika then spoke. "You may begin." Naruto took a deep breath and closed his eyes. "I can do this," he said. He put his fingers together. Suddenly, a perfect clone appeared beside him. At first, Naruto was shocked. Then he looked like he might burst into tears. Irika would inform him that he passed and would offer him a headband. Naruto would take it, and together he and I would begin to celebrate, going out to eat and partying the day away. Naruto would get to join a team of his very own. As the day ended, we parted ways and I returned to my own home. Once I entered, I would spend the rest of the night sleeping, catching up on what I had lost teaching Naruto. The next morning, however, I was awakened by a call on my phone. Groggily, still half asleep, I reached out and took the phone and answered it. "Hello?" I yawned. It was Irika. "There's an issue with your team placement, Ethan. We need you to come in and help us resolve it." Letting out one more yawn, I then spoke. "When can I come in? 1 p.m. sound good? We need you to come in now." I groaned. "Right now? We're sorry, Ethan, but it's important." I let out a sigh. "I'll be there in 30. I hung up the phone. I rolled out of bed and made my way to the bathroom where I'd splash my face with water to drive off the remnants of sleep. Getting prepared, I grabbed a toaster strudel and some juice, heading out the door, moving at my own pace while I ate. Eventually, I made my way to the academy. Entering the doors, I went to Irika's office where he was going over some papers. "Please have a seat," he said. I sat down. He began to speak. "We have an unusual circumstance." I raised a brow. "Unusual how?" Irika put the papers down. "It seems that we've got more shinobi than we do mentors right now." I shook my head in confusion. "What does that mean?" Irika then began to explain. "We had a set amount of mentors prepared to take on genin. As you know, it's customary that only 3 genin be on a team at any point in time. However, we have an overflow of students, being that all the teams are filled, and we still have 1 student left over, that being you." I shook my head, unable to understand what he was saying. "You mean I'm not going to be allowed to become a genin?" Irika shook his head. "I'm not saying that, I'm just saying this is an extraordinary circumstance." "Well, that sounds like it's Konoha's fault," I said. "What do you plan to do about it?" I asked. Irika then presented me 2 options. "The first option is we can hold you over until the next group of shinobi are ready to graduate and put you on a team with them." "How long will that take?" I asked. Irika looked over the papers. 1 year. I scoffed. "Too long. What's option 2? "Option 2, Irika said, looking over the correspondence with the Hokage. "We can put you on a current 3-man cell as a 4th member. It would be strange, but it's the only option we have. Normally, we'd just hold you over, but the Hokage seems to like you, so he said we could make an exception if you wanted to become a 4th wheel." "I'd much rather be put on a 4-man team than wait." Irika nodded. "I thought you might." He presented me a piece of paper. "Here, this is the team listing. Please keep it confidential. Nobody's supposed to know about it, so don't leak. What team would you like to be put on?" I looked the paper over and discovered Team 7, which would consist of Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, led by Kakashi Hatake. "Team 7, I said. Irika nodded and wrote something down. "I'll send the message over to Kakashi. Introductions will begin tomorrow at 8. Don't be late or you will be held over." I nodded in understanding and stood. I left and headed home. It truly was an unusual circumstance. I'd never seen a four-man team before, but considering that I apparently was the odd man out, had to make an exception. Didn't bother me any though. It seemed like it might be more fun to have an extra teammate. Going home, I spent the rest of my day thinking about tomorrow. I would get an idea. Given that I knew who my team was, I decided I would make them a gift. So I got to work crafting one to show my gratitude for accepting me onto the team. The next day, I headed back to the academy where I'd see a Jonin standing outside. He wore a mask and had one eye covered by his forehead protector. He was the definition of cool, but I was slightly afraid that he'd be the over-dramatic sort like Sasuke. I was pleasantly surprised when I was met with a calm voice and a subtle smile I could only detect by the shape of his eye. "Good morning. I assume you're Ethan," he said. I offered a slight bow of respect. "Yes, sir. I assume you to be my new sensei, Kakashi Hatake?" The masked man nodded. "Indeed." "I hope I haven't left you waiting long," I said as I returned to my full height. "Nah, I like to be fashionably late, and I see you do too, so I think we'll get along well." He opened the door. "Come, let's go introduce ourselves." He then walked down the hall until he reached a certain door. "Give me a second to get them warmed up for you." Kakashi would open the door and stick his head through, only for a chalkboard eraser to drop on his head. I was shocked that a Jonin could fall for such an easy trap. Perhaps he simply didn't know Naruto as well as I did. "I can already tell I'm not going to like you," he said as he opened the door up the rest of the way and entered the room. Dusting his hair off, Kakashi spoke. "I don't know how much you've heard, but Konoha made a bit of a flub, and our team is to be a four-man cell instead of three. That being said, we have yet to meet the last of our teammates. I hope you will all offer him a better greeting than I." Naruto was already loading a spitball into a straw. That was when I stepped in. The moment he saw me, he gasped and sucked the wad of paper down his throat, causing him to choke for a moment. He looked up. "Ethan, it's you." "You two know each other?" Sakura asked. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, Ethan's like my best friend." He walked over and offered me a hug, which was a hug I accepted. It was then that I spoke. I know this is an unusual circumstance, but I just wanted to thank each of you for welcoming me onto the team. I actually made you each a gift if you'll accept it." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a red agate magatama necklace not too unlike my own. "This is sealed with my chakra. It glows in the dark if you need some light." I handed it to Naruto, who was so ecstatic that he put it on immediately. I then went to Sakura. "For you, I made one out of pink agate. I hope you like it." She was moved by the gift and took it with gratitude and a slight bow. I then moved to Sasuke. "I also made one for you, Sasuke." I offered it to him and he looked it over. It was blue. He offered an unenthusiastic thanks before taking it from my hand. And then I turned to Kakashi. "And for you, Kakashi-sensei, something a little more special. A black agate magatama. It too has chakra sealed into it. It'll glow purple in the dark, but that glow is also a dark light, meaning if you ever need a dark light for investigations or anything, it should help you." Kakashi took it. "Well, that's quite thoughtful of you, Ethan." I offered them all a bow and then took my seat. Kakashi looked over the magatama in his hand before putting it on. "See, Naruto? That's how you're supposed to make a first impression." Naruto looked to the side with a bit of shame, but also couldn't help but smile. Kakashi took a deep breath. "Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Ethan, let me be the first to say welcome to Team Kakashi. Let's hope you survive long enough to count." I walked out of the academy and down the streets with my team. It was a good feeling to finally be closing in on my dreams. To my left was Naruto, to my right was Sakura, and off to the side was Sasuke. Ahead of me was Kakashi-sensei. Everything was perfect. My anticipation was high. What would he be having us do? What would our first mission be? What would be our first lesson? Normally, I wasn't an overly excitable person, but right now I felt like a rocket or a firework, ready to shoot into the sky and explode. He led us to an area away from the main village, a forested area. There, Kakashi stopped and turned around. He explained something to us. "As you know, there's one too many of you on this team. Instead of 3, I have 4. That's not gonna fly," he said to our shock. I had thought that the Hokage had personally guaranteed that I could be on a 4-man team, but Kakashi made it sound like such a thing was impossible. As if reading my mind, Kakashi spoke. "I don't care what the Hokage said. In the end, I am the Jonin in charge, and my decisions are what matters. He will oblige me." Kakashi then turned to look at us all. "I'm only taking 3 students, max. That being said, I only want the best of the best. I'm sure that most of you know of my reputation at this point. I'm one of Konoha's most elite shinobi, and I want to only rear up students with the potential to be the same. That being said, I will choose who becomes my students based on this test. He lifted up 3 bells tied together. These bells are your target. By the end of the day, each of you must have one. The genin who doesn't possess a bell by 6 p.m. will be sent back to the academy, stripped of their rank. Am I clear? Sakura raised her hand. What if less than 3 get bells? Do we get another chance? Kakashi shook his head. You each get a bell or you're off the team. I can fill spots if only 1 or 2 are worthy. And if none of us are worthy, Sasuke asked, then you all go back to the academy. I'll try again next year. The cold and direct statement sent shivers down my spine. This was about to be a free-for-all fight for survival. I looked around at the others. As much as I cared about them, I had to prioritize my own future. I needed to at least get 1 bell. Kakashi took out his book and began reading through it. You may begin when you desire. I was surprised by his decision to read while we attempted to attack him. Was this his way of telling us that he didn't even need to take us seriously? Was this just some plot to agitate us? Naruto ran forward with an angry battle cry, declaring that he could and would not allow Kakashi to underestimate him. If it was designed to anger us, it seemed to be an effective strategy, at least on Naruto. Naruto would then proceed to be subjected to the most humiliating technique imaginable. Indeed, this was designed to rile us up, to make us angry. Anger begat mistakes. I was attempting to read as deeply into strategies as I possibly could. I was already trying to learn. But furthermore, I came to realize how deplorable that 1,000 years of death jutsu was. There were just some things you didn't do, and Kakashi had crossed one of those lines. It led me to think about what it took to be a shinobi. Would I too need to throw away my own morality just to win? Sasuke was the second one in. He rushed through with quite the speed and fury. His taijutsu skills were everything I thought they would be, and it was quite a spectacle. I was certain that if any of us had a chance to get a bell, it had to be Sasuke. There was more than one occasion where Sasuke forced Kakashi to look up from his book to avoid an attack, specifically when he utilized the fire release fireball technique. The moment he did that, Kakashi's book was closed, if only for a moment. Such a technique was taxing, especially on a younger person. It was nowhere near as taxing as a lightning release technique, but still, the size which he used the technique at really surprised me. In the end, Sasuke was not capable of hurting Kakashi, nor taking any of the bells. I was the next to go. I cautiously approached and pulled a pair of kunai from my holster and threw them. Kakashi jumped back with great strength and speed. Come on, Ethan, do you really want to dishonor me like that? He said. I was confused. What do you mean? Kakashi started to continue, but before he could even finish his first word, another group of kunai, this time from Sasuke, buried themselves in the side of Kakashi's head, causing him to fall over. I was startled. Sasuke, what did you do? I shouted, panicking. You just killed our mentor. No, he didn't. Another familiar voice came from the trees. Suddenly, the body turned into a log. I looked up and saw Kakashi. Sasuke did what I hope you all would do. Take me seriously enough to try and kill me, because that's the only way you can succeed. You gotta try and kill me. But you're not taking us seriously, Naruto said. Who said I had to? Kakashi said. You're the genin and I'm the master. I don't need to take you seriously because I'm elite. You need to take me seriously because you're all crap ninja. It's the way of the world. Might is right. How strong you are as an individual dictates how far you'll go. Now, let's take this fight elsewhere. I'd like to begin retaliating. Kakashi jumped off into the forest. We began to follow him. We all went our own separate ways to search. I, however, could hardly cover my smile. I knew exactly where Kakashi-sensei was. He was still wearing his crystal magatama, the same magatama that had my chakra in it. I could sense where it was, and so I began to make my way toward it. Coming to a stop, I saw Kakashi propped up against a tree. I decided to sneak behind him and take a bell subtly. Coming up as quietly as possible, I reached around for the bells. Suddenly, I felt a jerking motion as all of my organs shifted. My foot was yanked up as a rope got a hold of my leg. I was pulled up into the air. Dizziness and a desire to puke began to set in as my equilibrium was completely out of whack. I looked up or down at Kakashi, who explained that shinobi use more than their eyes. He commended me on using my chakra, however, to track him, saying that it was a clever trick and meant I was already getting the hang of what it took to be a shinobi. However, Kakashi said, you still need to learn to use all of your senses at once, including your chakra. If you had, you would have spotted that obvious trap I had set. Then maybe you would have gotten the bells. He then ran off, leaving me there. I wasn't feeling good. The blood was rushing to my head, and I felt as I might just pass out, because the next thing I knew, Sakura appeared and cut me down. Falling on my face, I moaned a bit before rising to my feet. Thanks, Sakura. Together, she and I would continue on. It seemed that both Naruto and Sasuke had also fallen victim to Kakashi's trickery, with Naruto being tied up as I was and Sasuke having been buried alive. Sakura herself admitted that she'd been cast under genjutsu, where she'd seen something that she wasn't comfortable repeating. However, upon seeing Sasuke buried up to his neck, she screamed out that he'd been decapitated and passed out once more. I would walk over. You sure do seem to be ahead of the pack, Sasuke, I said with a chuckle. Die, he spat in my direction. Wiping the tears of laughter from my eyes, I used one of my primary nature transformations, Earth Release, to raise Sasuke from the ground. Seems you've been practicing, Sasuke said. My crystal release is part Earth Release, part Water Release. Due to that, I study the use of both. I'm not like a master with it, but due to it being my particular Kekai Genkai, I do have experience. I pulled him up. At about that time, Naruto was catching up. He seemed to be a little down in the dumps. I don't think we're gonna be able to do it, guys, he said. I looked around. Even Sasuke couldn't do it. He was completely humiliated. I thought about it quite a bit. We do have an option. What is it? Naruto asked. I looked up. We each have awesome abilities. Sasuke has incredible taijutsu, speed, and ferocity. Sakura has grace, control, and the ability to get herself and likely others out of genjutsu. I have some precision and control over certain ninjutsu, and Naruto is boisterous and loud, making for a good distraction. We can't do this if we go at it alone, but if we work together, maybe we can get those bells. But how would we do this? Sasuke asked. If we work together knowing one of us won't make it, how can we keep from screwing it up? I began to think about it. I wasn't supposed to be here, I said. This was supposed to be your team, not mine. I'm the odd man out, and it's because of me that we have to do this at all. I'll volunteer to leave. As I said that, I was halfway on the verge of crying. I didn't want this, but I knew that the only way we could do this was through teamwork, and the only way the team could work was if there was a designated sacrifice. Weighing the options, my conscience told me that it had to be me. I couldn't force 3 others to lose their dreams with me. I had to sacrifice. As hard as it was, that was my decision. The team was silent for a moment. If Ethan's gonna be the sacrifice, then I want him to lead us, Naruto said. Ethan came up with the plan he should execute, Sasuke said. I agree, Sakura said. They looked at me. What should we do? Having used the black agate stone to locate Kakashi again, which I knew he left on, likely to lure me into another trap, we began to set ourselves up. Naruto was to cause the distraction, and Sakura was to remain close to me should either of us get cast under genjutsu. Sasuke would be our spearhead, rushing in with his great strength, and I was to utilize my crystal release in an attempt to immobilize Kakashi. When we were all in place, we began to communicate via hand signals. When we felt that the time was right, Naruto began his distraction. He would show up in front of Kakashi and start waffling, basically. Kakashi would look up at Naruto and offer a bit of a smile and shake his head. He kept an eye on him the whole time, while Naruto continued to make a scene. As this was happening, I began to utilize my crystal release to start covering Kakashi's feet in crystals, holding him in place. He didn't notice it yet, not to my knowledge. Once his feet were properly covered, I gave Sasuke the signal, and Sasuke rushed out for the bells. Kakashi saw this and attempted to create distance to protect the bells, but upon doing so, he realized that his feet were caught, causing him to trip. Sasuke would keep rushing forward and would take the bells when Kakashi was unable to protect himself. We all celebrated in victory, knowing that we managed to take the bells and work together properly. Kakashi stood and began to clap his hands. Congratulations, team. You managed to take the bells. But now we have a big question to ask. Who here is going home? We all looked to each other. This was what we had tried not to think about during the mission. Kakashi spoke. You know this needs to be done. Which of you will it be? He asked. That was when I raised my hand. Kakashi looked over. Ethan, you're volunteering. I nodded. I wasn't supposed to be on this team, I said. Konoha made a mistake, but that doesn't reflect on these guys. Kakashi-sensei, it's because of me and me alone that this team is experiencing this whole situation, and I can't allow my team in good conscience to lose their dreams just to fulfill my own. Kakashi nodded. Fair. If that's how it is, then you're excused. It was everything I could do to keep myself from breaking down into tears. I began to walk off. As I did so, I heard a rather boisterous voice speak out from behind me. This is total bull, the voice said. Ethan's a great shinobi, and he shouldn't be forced to go home. It's not his fault that Konoha forgot to put him on a team. You shouldn't send him home, Kakashi-sensei. I looked back to see Naruto speaking. The only reason I'm a genin right now is because of him, and I can't let you take that away. Kakashi sat there silently for a moment. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't take on more than 3. I just don't have the RAM for it. Naruto began to puff out his chest. If you don't have room for Ethan, then you don't have room for me. How does that help your RAM? Naruto began to walk away after me. Naruto, what did you do? I asked. You didn't have to do that. Now you're gonna get in trouble. Naruto shook his head. I'd be in worse trouble now if it weren't for you. I'm with you till the end of the line. He offered his fist for a bump. I felt my tears welling up at the bottom of my lids. I bumped his fist. Unbeknownst to me, Sakura and Sasuke were also overcome with their own hard decisions. In their own hearts, they felt as if they were unable to do this. Naruto and Ethan both gone. Naruto sacrificing his spot just to be with me, they were filled with conviction. Sakura shook her head. I can't do it. I gotta protest this. She stood and walked over to me and Naruto. I'm staying with you guys. Kakashi sighed and looked at Sasuke. Will you go too? He asked. Sasuke was silent for a moment. He then stood and began to walk over to the rest of us. I will. I'm staying with these 3, he said. At this time, my eyes really were overflowing with tears. Guys, I couldn't express what I wanted to say. My emotions were overwhelmed, but they were with me. They chose me over the team. How blessed I was. These were my true friends. Despite their uncomfortability, I hugged them and they hugged me back. It was at this moment that Kakashi stood and began to clap. Bravo, bravo. We were confused by this. What? I asked as we looked on. Kakashi walked closer. This is the perfect team, he said. You're all exactly what I think a team should be. The way that you stick together in the face of doom. Perfect. He then spoke up. I will take you all on. What about your RAM? Naruto asked. Kakashi smiled. I can handle 4. I just wanted to make sure your conviction was strong enough, he said. Welcome to Team Kakashi. We all then went out to celebrate once again. No longer as just friends, but now as comrades, brothers and sisters in arms. That being said, our missions weren't exactly the coolest after that. We weren't even leaving the village, let alone doing anything dangerous. I likened it more to public service. We weren't even really fighting crime in Konoha, just picking up trash. But I knew everyone had to start somewhere, and that Kakashi's decisions were the best ones that could be made. I decided to trust his judgment, but someone else on our team didn't, and he made sure to let the Hokage know about it too, despite my chagrin. Naruto complained to the Hokage about our missions and about how boring they were. He practically demanded a better mission despite our protests to make him be more respectful. The Hokage, however, didn't grow angry or red in the face as we expected. No, he smiled. All right then, Naruto. If you think your team can handle a better mission, I'll give you this one. This is a high-ranking Genin mission that takes place outside of the village. It's an escort mission. Your mission will be to escort the architect, Tazuna, back to his village, safeguarding him from the threat of bandits. Naruto rolled his head back as he breathed out the word finally, taking the scroll. He brought it back to the team. Kakashi took it and read it. Are you guys sure you're ready for the mission? Naruto nodded his head, and I had no other choice but to agree. After all, we had all the basics down and were capable of handling ourselves. While we might have been weak shinobi, we had training that gave us the edge over your ordinary bandits. Yeah, I think we are. Sasuke didn't even feel he needed to be asked. He was so confident in his own abilities that he didn't need to answer. Sakura was the most skeptical of us all, but she too agreed for the main reason that Sasuke did. So we all went home to prepare for our mission. I grabbed only what I thought I would need, that being an extra set of clothes, as well as some food, water, and various other shinobi gear and supplies. The day after, we all met together once again, where we proceeded to leave. I would slip a magatama into Tazuna's pocket when nobody was looking, just to make sure that I had a tracker on him just in case. One could never be too careful. As we walked though, I must admit I didn't pay much attention. That was a mistake, because when the Demon Brothers appeared, we were blindsided. They descended upon us within a moment's notice. Out of fear, Naruto froze. I was also moving on fear, but my reaction was slightly different. My reaction was to attack. It was reckless and everywhere, a sudden creation of crystals that I sent flying off like a shotgun blast toward the Demon Bros. They dodged it, of course, but my attack had also struck Naruto, putting him on his knees. Naruto, are you alright? Naruto couldn't speak. I saw blood though. Oh no, I hurt you. Sasuke would be the only one in control of his own faculties. He would spring into action, attacking the Demon Bros all by himself. Alone, without any help, he managed to put them away. I, on the other hand, was tending to Naruto, pulling out the crystals that had struck him in the back. "We need first aid over here," I said. Thankfully, he didn't seem to have been struck by many of them, but the ones he had been struck by had gone through some of the deeper layers of his skin, causing bleeding. Kakashi began to mend his wounds as I stood off to the side, feeling more and more guilty about what I had done. Thankfully, Naruto's wounds were easily mended, but it was then that Kakashi began considering turning around, and I thought for sure that he would. After all, what we had faced were two known shinobi in the bingo book. They were well-known mercenaries, rogue shinobi from the village hidden in the mist, but when Kakashi stated that we would turn around, Naruto shouted no. He told them that he refused to turn back now and he was going to push forward. Kakashi tried to get Naruto to see reason. "You've been wounded, you froze, and Ethan panicked. If we face more assassins like this, someone could get hurt, or worse." Naruto shook his head. "No, it's not Ethan's fault. I was in the way. He had to react. If he hadn't done what he had, I'd be dead now. It's my fault for being in the same place. I froze. That's on me, but I swear on this blood that I've lost that I'll never freeze again." Sasuke seconded this. "I didn't freeze. In fact, I fought against and defeated these demon brothers. I can handle myself, and wherever these two clowns fail, I'll pick up the slack." I hated being called a clown, but to a point I agreed with him. I felt like a clown for failing to properly defend Naruto. It was embarrassing, but thankfully Sasuke was there to help. Kakashi eventually relented and we decided to continue. And as we did, we once again would be stopped by another assassin. But this assassin was something beyond just the demon brothers. It was a former member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, Zabuza. I looked back at Tazuna and spoke. "What the heck did you do to deserve someone sending a former member of the Ninja Swordsmen after you?" He refused to elaborate. Kakashi stepped forward and began to duel with Zabuza. The two of them fought, with Kakashi displaying his Sharingan here for the first time. I'd heard about it, but I'd never seen it myself. I had assumed that only the Uchiha could attain such a dojutsu. Could Kakashi have had distant Uchiha blood? Either way, he lost this battle. Caught in a water prison, we watched as our mentor slowly suffocated. What could we do? Zabuza would kill Kakashi and then kill us unless we handed over Tazuna. And if we handed over Tazuna, he would kill him too. We couldn't abandon our mission, and we couldn't abandon our mentor either. We only had one choice, and we all knew it. That choice was to fight. But how? This guy was stronger than our mentor, who we could hardly beat ourselves. What could we do? I looked at Naruto and Sasuke. Together we began to come up with a plan on our own. We knew that we didn't have the physical skill with which to defeat Zabuza, so we would need to win through the same guile we used to defeat Kakashi. That would require a distraction. Perhaps a distraction to distract from another distraction. Layering on distractions would further hide the truth of our attack. In essence, all we really needed to do was get Zabuza to move his hand from the water sphere. If we did that, the jutsu would dissipate and Kakashi-sensei would be freed. But how exactly would we do that? How could my crystals help? That was the question. Naruto had the idea of using the transformation jutsu and the shadow clone jutsu. As for me, I couldn't exactly lock down Zabuza like we had with Kakashi, as the point would be to make Zabuza escape the attack, not block it. As I thought about it, I felt like the best I could do was not overly insert myself into the plan, but to support it however I could. So I began throwing kunai at Zabuza to keep him distracted. Then Sasuke threw a demon wind shuriken at Zabuza, which he barely dodged. I keep up the assault, flinging everything but the kitchen sink at the dude. It's then that Naruto reveals that he was the demon wind shuriken all along and flings kunai back at him. Zabuza gets out of the way, but in doing so, he accidentally lets go of Kakashi's water prison. Kakashi was free, exiting the water with a gasp of air and a cough. He began to rise. Zabuza then knew for certain that he couldn't win. It was then that a mysterious new shinobi appeared and killed Zabuza. I watched as he went down and was put on guard by this new shinobi with an odd mask that looked similar to that of an Anbu. I was ready to attack, but it was then that Kakashi put his hand on my shoulder. "Easy," he said. "This guy is not a danger to you. He's just a hunter nin. He's here to collect Zabuza. So long as we stay out of his way, he won't attack us." It was then that the hunter nin lifted Zabuza up and began to flee with him. Oh. I looked back. "What is it, Kakashi-sensei?" I asked. Kakashi shook his head. "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." At this time, fatigue began to overtake Kakashi. "We need to find a place to rest for the night," he said. Tazuna looked around. "We're not too far from my home. We can go there for the night," he said. So we began to make our way toward Tazuna's home for the night, where we would rest. While there, I was able to get a bit more information on what was going on, including the personal lives of Tazuna himself, his daughter, and his grandson. A sad story unfolded before me of a man who was so generous that he didn't even keep his own life from his people. I was inspired by it, but the story continued and revealed that the man had been murdered, his life stolen by the crime lord that now held the village in his clutches. I grit my teeth as the boy who this man loved stormed off, delivering an exposition on how shinobi were stupid and how there was no such thing as a real hero. Naruto took offense, and he stood, seeming like he might clobber the poor boy, but keeping in mind this child's mental and emotional state, my compassionate side began to overflow. Gripping Naruto's collar, I pulled him back to his seat and spoke. "Don't let it get to you, Naruto. He's been through a lot." "We've all been through a lot," Naruto said. "Doesn't give him the right to be a jerk." "No, it doesn't," I told Naruto. "It doesn't give him the right to be a jerk, but it does give him an excuse. So try to look past it and understand why he's saying these things. Look at his face again and tell me what you see." Naruto looked at the face he'd previously seen as confrontational and finally spotted the tears sitting in the corner of the boy's eyes. He looked back at me for a moment before looking to the boy. I let Naruto go, straightening out his collar before pulling away. The boy ran from us, up the stairs towards his room. I stood from the table and looked at Tazuna and Tsunami. I offered a slight bow. "Thank you for the meal. Can I have your permission to speak with your son? I want to try to comfort him." Tazuna and Tsunami looked at each other, with Inari's mother nodding, giving me the freedom to do as I needed. I thanked them and began to slowly make my way up the stairs. Coming to the edge of the room, I heard the gentle crying of a boy inside, and my heart was starting to break. I knock on the door. "Go away," is all I hear within. "Please, let me come in," I say. "Leave me alone," the voice shouted. Despite the protests, as rude as it might have been, I entered the room. Knowing he could do nothing to stop me, he elected to ignore me. Coming to the side of the bed, I sat down, facing away from Inari, sitting back to back. I did this to offer him some privacy, just in case he couldn't hide his tears. In the end, I knew that as a guy, he would see his tears as weakness, but that wasn't so. It took a lot of strength to cry, especially in front of others. They weren't a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. "Inari, can we talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about. He's dead. He's gone. He's never coming back." I shake my head. "I mean, about you." "What's there to talk about? That I'm sad and lonely? That the only person I could look up to is gone? I don't need your pity. I don't need your psychiatry." I shake my head. "Inari, it has nothing to do with that. You're in pain, and I don't want you to be." "Sometimes there's nothing you can do. I wish my dad had learned that. Maybe if he wasn't always trying to be a hero, he'd still be here with me." I turn around eventually. I crawl across the bed and sit next to him. "Inari, I know you're sad. You're scared, lonely. I am too." Inari was silent. He didn't even dare answer. He knew that if he did, he'd lose his cool. "Inari, I don't have anyone at home waiting for me." Inari looked up. "What happened to them?" I shook my head. "I don't know where they are or why they're gone. They just are. For as long as I can remember, I've lived alone, by myself. I know how hard that is." I continued to explain to him my own life story. Slowly, he began asking questions, asking why I became a shinobi in the first place. He wanted to know if I became a shinobi because I felt I needed a family, and honestly, I wasn't sure what to say. Perhaps that really was the reason I became a shinobi, but another thing he asked me was why I'd be willing to throw my life away for someone else, and the only answer I could give him was love. Love of others, love of the greater good of the village. He seemed to understand, but he couldn't completely accept it. I told him that it was okay to be sad, but that we shouldn't let it change our perspective on things. I reminded him that Kaiza had done what he had out of love, because he loved Inari. I would then leave Inari alone. I wanted to fix the situation, and going into it, I thought I could. But as the conversation continued, I felt as if I was making no progress. There were some wounds that only time could heal. I just wanted Inari to know that it eventually would heal. We further continued our training while Kakashi rested. We tried running up the sides of trees. I was able to pick it up fairly easily. Not as early as Sakura, but early as Naruto and Sasuke due to my need to control my chakra while creating crystals. It was a very deep process creating crystals and making sure everything bonded in a perfect repeating pattern, and that required chakra control. Doing it with my feet was harder though. But given that I had a leg up on the competition, I would manage to climb those trees more quickly than the other two. Despite that, I waited for them. Sasuke was next after me, with Naruto training well into the night. I ended up falling asleep by a tree as he kept trying. The next morning, I woke up to see another there. A boy in a cherry blossom kimono. Well, I only figured out that it was a boy later on. Needless to say, Naruto and I were both surprised. But he seemed kind. Despite this, I felt as though I recognized him from somewhere, and I wasn't exactly sure from where. I would ask Naruto about this, and he would say that he'd never seen him before in his life. After this, Naruto kept training, working himself half to death. So much so that when Kakashi was finally able to get out of bed, Naruto wasn't. so we elected to go without him to the bridge to protect the workers. For the most part, nothing was unusual. That was until Zabuza appeared again. I was confused. How could he have survived, I wondered. It was then that the Hunter Nin appeared beside him. I then realized that Zabuza had never been killed, and the Hunter Nin had helped him fake his demise to escape. Kakashi once again approached Zabuza, ready for a rematch. I, on the other hand, was with Sasuke, ready to face the masked boy. As the battles began, Sasuke and I quickly found ourselves trapped among the ice mirrors. I was confused. That being said, I seemed to be the perfect counter after all, as ice was a crystalline structure as well. The only difference was that instead of using wind release, I used earth release. I was able to mostly protect Sasuke from the masked boy's attacks, but in return, we couldn't attack back. It had taken everything I had to create the crystal release Crimson Fruit. We seemed to be at a perfect standoff. Sasuke was enraged that he couldn't do anything. I promised that the moment we could escape, I would cancel the jutsu, but as it stood, the masked boy didn't seem to be going anywhere. That was until Kakashi finally got the better of Zabuza. The masked boy would then disengage from us. I would cancel the technique, but as we went to face the masked boy, we found him sitting on the edge of Kakashi's Chidori. As Zabuza planned to cleave the two in half, I cried out, creating a crystal spire before Kakashi, impaling the body of the masked boy before also impaling Zabuza. Zabuza would drop his blade to the ground. It was at this time that Naruto showed up, as did Gato and his men. However, as Kakashi utilized the clone jutsu, he managed to scare off Gato's thugs. I, on the other hand, approached the masked boy and removed his mask. Naruto and I were both startled. Sasuke asked us what was going on, and I simply responded, "This boy appeared to us earlier today. He gave us words of encouragement." It was then that I realized just how truly dark the shinobi world was. Either this boy was planted there to destroy our confidence, or he was forced to do things he didn't want to do. Either way, it ended with this boy's demise. Something both Naruto and I lamented. Kakashi explained to us that being a shinobi, or a hero for that matter, sometimes meant making a sacrifice, and sometimes that sacrifice wasn't oneself. Sometimes the hardest sacrifice was to sacrifice someone else. I was definitely feeling that right now. In the end, the bridge was able to be completed, and it'd be named after the Jonin who ensured that it would be. It would be named the Scarecrow Bridge. With our mission complete, we decided to return to Konoha, where we were to inform Hiruzen of just how much the people of the Land of Waves could use our help. They were hoping that trade lines would be open between our two villages, so they could defend themselves with our help. But as we traveled home, I couldn't help but think of Haku. Why had he come to us on that day? He could have killed us as we slept, but instead he seemed to intentionally wake us. Why? Perhaps he wanted to talk, wanted to see what our convictions were. Perhaps he wanted to make friends with us. Maybe he too was lonely. It was too late to ask him now though, but it didn't stop me from pondering him and his motivations. The more I thought on this though, the more the similarities between us began to stand out. I even thought about our jutsu. "You know, he used crystals too," I said to Sakura as we walked home. She looked at me questioningly. I looked over to her. "I wonder, can I replicate some of his jutsu with my own? Imagine what I could do with that. What was the technique he used called?" Sakura thought back. Sasuke then spoke up before her. "The demonic mirroring ice crystals." I pointed to Sasuke. "Yeah, that. I wonder if maybe I can do something similar." "Keep thinking about it," Kakashi said. "The way we grow isn't only dependent upon techniques we develop on our own, but upon finding and incorporating the best techniques of others. I live off that type of growth. It's why I'm called the Copy Ninja." I continued to think about this until we got back to Konoha. Once there, we were debriefed and allowed to leave. I told my side of the story, as did everyone else. Doing so helped Konoha paint a picture of the events that happened and form a file on it in case it grew too large, but all in all, it seemed to be an open and shut case. However, after this, we would begin to notice that others were filing into the village too. I began to ask around, wondering what was going on, with some of the villagers telling me that these were visitors from other hidden villages who were here for the Chunin exams. I grew excited upon hearing this. In my heart, I wanted to take the exams, but I knew it would be too early, so I begrudgingly let the thought fly by as if I never had it, satiating my disappointment by reminding myself that I could go and see the exams personally. That was when Kakashi met with us. He informed us that we could join the exams if we all agreed to. Looking to the rest of Team 7, I smiled. We had all decided to join the Chunin exams. The little quartet of shinobi made its way out of the Hokage's office after debriefing, having had our stories verified and Kakashi having given us leave to take the exams if we wanted. Of course, I was nervous. We were once again an odd squad. The exams were only supposed to allow 3-man teams, yet we were 4. Kakashi had explained to me that exceptions had been made in the past, particularly for him, in which he could take the exams alone. Surely an exception could be made for Team 7. That being said, we weren't the only fresh genin to be sent to the exams. Asuma and Kurenai, upon hearing what it was Kakashi would do, had determined to send their own rookie shinobi. We were to be the rookie 10, or so we were planned to be if we all made it to the signups, but we were held up a bit. There seemed to be another genin interested in us. As we walked to the exit, a voice called out, attempting to get Sasuke's attention. The voice spoke of the legendary Sharingan and the last Uchiha. I knew he must have been talking about Sasuke. I had seen the Sharingan myself while we were in the Land of Waves. In fact, I'd seen it twice, once in Sasuke and once in Kakashi. This led me to question if Kakashi-sensei might be an Uchiha as well, if not distantly. Well, the boy had issued his challenge, and Sasuke, being ever prideful, feeling the need to prove himself, accepted. Expecting this to take a while, I found a place out of the way to sit down, my eyes carefully trained on the clock, knowing that we only had a certain amount of time to sign up. Naruto and Sakura sat down on either side of me as the two started to spar. At first, I hadn't noticed it, likely because I thought that maybe it was out of respect for the building they were fighting in, but eventually I couldn't help but ask, why is that boy with the bushy eyebrows not using ninjutsu? That's because he can't, Sakura said. I was confused. What do you mean? Sakura explained. Well, there's a lot of explanations I've heard. Some that he doesn't possess the ability to mold chakra due to a disease he developed as a baby. Others just say he doesn't have the skill to. The reason we don't know. All we know is that he can't mold it. He has it. In fact, he's got a lot of chakra from the rumors I've heard, but for some reason he can't use it properly. Noticing the Konoha crest upon his belt, I realized that he was an official shinobi. How did he pass the test to become a genin? Don't you have to be proficient in at least one low-tier ninjutsu to pass? Sakura nodded. Indeed, but it seems he might be an exception. I heard he had a Jonin mentor before he even became a genin, and that he recommended him to become a genin by personally training him. What he can do is still a mystery, but I think he mastered the use of a rare jutsu that doesn't require molding to use. If it doesn't require molding, then why is it rare? Doesn't that mean anyone can use it? Sakura shook her head. Because it has some other prerequisites that are even more taxing than molding chakra. Something apparently only he and a determined few others are capable of utilizing. I watched in awe as Sasuke and this Rock Lee fellow continued to fight. Lee would eventually utilize something strange. He seemed to call out the opening of certain gates. His speed and power seemed to increase as he surpassed Sasuke in skill again. Was this that technique? It looked as though he might beat Sasuke. However, before he could, another showed up. I looked over at the flamboyant man who seemed to begin to scold Lee. Who's that? I asked. That's his mentor, Might Guy, Sakura said. Guy struck Lee in the face, drawing an audible gasp from me as I covered my mouth. Mentors weren't allowed to strike genin for disciplinary reasons, right? Before I could continue the line of thought, the two began crying in each other's arms. Wait, what? What's going on here? Lee would immediately be sent out to do laps as penance for apparently breaking his word to his master that he wouldn't use his technique unless it was an emergency. So that was his technique, I said, overhearing their conversation. So it's a kind of power-up? Interesting. After a brief conversation with Might Guy, I reminded my group that we only had a little bit of time before they stopped accepting applications for the exams, so we all rushed off to apply. As we did, I couldn't help but notice that Sasuke was in a bad mood, or at least worse than usual. He had always been the prideful kind that needed to prove himself, so when he was almost soundly defeated, it probably took a toll on him. I didn't mention it though. We would sign up, getting our applications in just moments before the ability to apply was removed. Wow, that was unnecessarily climactic, I said, seeing the sun touch the horizon. Tomorrow, the exams started, so we all decided to go home and rest to prepare. That being said, sleep was something that was hard to come by for me, so instead I just grabbed a nice snack and sat on my bed watching Dragon Ball Z for most of the night until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up early. I was a bit tired, so I took a cold shower. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I assumed I would need to be fully ready to display all of my shinobi abilities when asked, so I was sure to shower first, using the special scentless soap that was standard issue for shinobi to ensure that I'd remain undetectable to the nose as much as the eyes. Getting on my Sunday best, I was sure to pack the things I thought I would need for this test, and proceeded to make my way to the academy where we were supposed to meet up for the first test. Upon arrival, I caught up with Sasuke and Sakura and proceeded to wait for Naruto, who was fashionably late as per usual. Entering in, I was immediately intimidated by the faces of all those around me. The one thing I knew by looking at them was that most of them were far older than I, and their faces were so mean. All I had ever seen were the joyful faces in my village, but when I saw the people here, they all, well, for lack of a better comparison, they all looked like Sasuke. Of course, Sasuke wasn't intimidated by this, I don't think, but Sakura was. I knew one person for sure wasn't intimidated, and that was Naruto. Naruto literally addressed the whole crowd and told him he was going to beat them all, much to my terror. I felt as though my heart would stop, as Naruto's ignorance seemed to be dragging me into the spotlight as well. I sorta slipped away a little bit where I came across a kid playing with what appeared to be trading cards. That was until I noticed my face on one of them. Wait, I have a training card? Isn't that only for famous shinobi? The kid looked up. Huh? Oh no, these aren't trading cards, friend. These are information cards. I knelt down and looked at the one of me. It had some basic general information about who I was, my background, and any known abilities. It listed my Kekai Genkai even. This card doxes me, I said with a cold sweat. I knew this would be kinda scary, but I never knew how terrifying the shinobi world really was. I couldn't hide here if I wanted to. The boy took the card back. No hard feelings, friend. This is just standard protocol. It's all information readily available about you in the system. Anyone can check up on it at any time. It's a valuable resource, and you should try to use it. To make me feel better, he showed me his own personal card. I read it. Kabuto Yakushi, Konoha Genin. I smiled and handed it back to him, feeling a little better. I was afraid my apartment might have been bugged. Oh, I'm sure it is, but not by me, Kabuto said. As goodwill, he even let me read the rest of the cards. He said that it was to give someone with a disadvantage a well-deserved leg up, not to mention that Konoha shinobi had to stick together. For the first time since entering the room, I felt comfortable. This guy was nice. I liked him. I was glad that he was a Konoha shinobi because that meant that maybe I could bring him into my friend group. But just as I was thinking about how comfortable I was, a group of shinobi appeared. They seemed to be from another village, but I couldn't tell from where. It wasn't one of the 5 great villages, it was something else, represented by a music note. The hidden music village? Was there such a place? They began to harass Kabuto, and I felt my chest swell with anger, so I stepped between them like any true friend would. That was when the guy tried to strike me. I dodged to the side, only barely getting nicked, only enough to draw a little bit of blood. You know it's against the rules to fight in here. If you don't leave us alone, I'll report you, I told him. I had hoped to intimidate him and scare him off, thinking it might give me the advantage and respect I thought I deserved. But I made the mistake of flaunting Konoha's power and not my own. That made me look even weaker. The fellow pulled his gauntlet back. I smiled, sure that I had won, but suddenly my body began to feel weird. The room began to spin. I stumbled to the side, fell to my knees, and proceeded to puke right there on the floor. My heart began to beat fast as my breathing quickened. I turned pale as a ghost and began to panic. What is this? What did he do to me? Is this poison? I asked. At this time, Naruto and Sasuke came over, calling out the group. I couldn't tell what they were saying, as my mind had halfway convinced itself that I was going to die in a few minutes. That was until Kabuto pulled me back to sit on my rump. He helped me make my way to the wall, where he began to explain to me what was going on. Don't worry, Ethan, you're not poisoned, you're just dizzy. He unleashed a sound-based jutsu that disturbed your inner ear. He just made you really dizzy, like when you spin too fast or get on a roller coaster. It's a basic jutsu. I nodded. I was already having a panic attack though, my eyes filling with tears, and I was giggling uncontrollably as every muscle in my body trembled. The group of sound ninjas stood over me. Look at him. He's so weak. Go home, little boy. You're not fit to take this exam. He walked away. Sasuke watched them go with a scowl on his face. Don't listen to them, Ethan. You were just caught off guard. I nodded. Kabuto looked at me as though he felt bad. He pulled out a handkerchief and handed it to me. I dabbed my eyes and blew my nose and smiled again. Thanks, I think I'm okay now. I took a deep breath. It was a scare, but now I knew how it worked. I wouldn't get taken by surprise again if I ran into him. Naruto and Sakura helped me stand. I was no longer dizzy, but my nerves had sapped my strength, so Sasuke went and got me something to drink to restore my energy, knowing I'd need it. He came back with a Pocari Sweat and a granola bar. At about this time, we were called in for the first test of the exams. I entered and found a seat next to Naruto. As I sat there, my hands still shaking as I drank my drink, I proceeded to try and nibble on the granola bar. You sure you're okay? Naruto asked. I nodded. Yeah, I always get like this after I puke. I took a deep breath and looked over the paper I'd been presented. There were a lot of hard questions on here. How the heck am I supposed to answer any of these? I asked. The proctor, a stern, muscular, and scarred man, belted out "Quiet" in my direction with about as much vigor as his body appeared to contain. I shrunk back in my seat and obliged. As the test began, I sat there trying to figure out the answers. There was a lot of math here, finding the proper angles of attack for maximized efficiency. I pulled out a second blank piece of paper just to visualize the formulas in my head. It was hard for me to pin this stuff down, and it was bugging me up. I was too focused on the test to realize that the test itself might have been a test. In the end, even if I had noticed, it still might not have mattered. I didn't really have the ability to properly cheat without being seen. I didn't have the ocular power, but as the time came to an end, I realized that I had hardly answered even half the questions. I wanted to die right then and there. My head hit the table as I looked over at Naruto. "I failed," I whispered. Naruto giggled and showed me his paper. He had answered all the questions, but all of them were wrong. "I failed too," he said with a suppressed laugh. I couldn't help but smile seeing this. It was then that we were informed that we would get a redemption question, a chance to prove that we had what it took. But the penalty of getting the question wrong was forfeiture of future possibility of taking the Chunin exam. I was appalled. "You can't do that though." "I can and I will," Ibiki Marino spoke. He continued to explain it to everyone. I looked at my paper, pale as a ghost. My trembling had returned to the point that I could hardly even drink my Pocari now. I looked at Naruto, who was smiling, full of pride. "Are you quitting?" I asked Naruto. He shook his head. "Nope," he declared as if he were some ambitious captain on the high seas. By comparison, I was but a swabby, cleaning the deck with my tail between my legs. "You're gonna take it?" Naruto nodded. "I plan to become a great shinobi. Regardless of whether I'm Chunin or not, I'm gonna be Hokage." He looked over. "What about you, Ethan? What are you gonna do?" The very question filled me with courage and determination. A sparkle in my eye, I smiled and declared my intention of taking it on. My dream had always been to help people and to be the best me I could be. I could continue to do that as a genin. It was all just words on paper. My true value was determined not by another human, but by myself. I prepared to answer the question when the timer began. The question was tough, almost nonsensical, illogical. I knew there was no chance I could get it right, but I did the best I could and chose the answer my heart told me to choose. So then I sat back and put it all in God's hands. He was the only one who could save me now. As I did so, Ibiki clicked the timer. "Time. Pencils down." We all sat there. He took our papers and looked them over real quick. "Congratulations. You all passed," he said. "Even me?" I shouted before covering my mouth in embarrassment. Ibiki smiled. "No, Ethan, you're the odd man out." "Of course you passed. I wouldn't say all of you if I wasn't including you." I jumped out of my seat in celebration. I wasn't the only one. Naruto and half the rest of the class did the same. Ibiki laughed a bit before shooing us out of the classroom for the second round. Filled with a brand new fire, I raced out of the room with Naruto and the others and did a backflip. I tripped and landed on my rear, but it wasn't enough to dampen my enthusiasm. "We did it! We passed!" I shouted. It was then that Dosu, the guy who had attacked me before, walked past. "Don't get too cocky yet. Luck might have carried you through that test, but it won't save you in the next." We watched as he walked by. Kabuto exited right after. "Don't pay attention to him. You should be proud you've made it this far. Keep it up and do the best you can." For the second test, we were to go to the Forest of Death for a competitive and timed game of Capture the Flag. I was already a little nervous. After all, who names a forest that? This was made even worse when we had to sign a waiver to take the test, basically releasing Konoha of any responsibility should we die or be injured. Basically, the piece of paper said, if you take this test, you can't sue us if you get hurt. That told me that there was a chance that I could indeed get hurt, or worse. But I forgot about that. This is what being a shinobi meant. I had to do the dangerous stuff. And so, because we were a 4-man team instead of a 3-man team, they had to handicap us. They told us we would start with neither scroll, and we'd need to get them both. This was shaping up to be a rough test, especially for us. But considering that we had an unfair advantage, it was only right that they would give us a handicap. This new position would be called IT, and it would be informed to the rest of the group that Team 7 is IT. An old term meaning that we were the predators searching for scrolls from anyone. Public enemy number 1. I didn't really want to be public enemy. I was too mild-mannered to be a predator. Naruto laughed. "Sounds like fun." He looked over to me. "Has anyone seen that one movie, Alien vs. Predator? That's like us. We're the predators." Sasuke looked at Naruto. "Wait, didn't the predators die in the end?" Naruto thought about it. I don't know. My eyes were kind of closed through half the movie. I know they killed a lot of aliens, though. So just imagine you're a predator or something. Let's rip out some skulls." Despite that, I felt a little more confident. The only way to overcome fear was to become scarier than the thing you were afraid of, and so that's what I would do. As soon as the gates opened, we ran through. Naruto and I, and even Sasuke, were partaking in this game of aliens versus predators, but Sakura seemed to be not so interested. As we ran through the forest, Sasuke began to use his Sharingan to examine the area and search for any form of prey. He eventually pointed out that there was a group. We took to the tree limbs and looked down. It was Team Guy. Neji, Lee, and Tenten were all down there. Sasuke looked to us. He began to signal to us, telling us to be cautious. Looking closer, I noticed that everyone in the camp was acting natural save Neji, who had inexplicably stopped moving. Lee and Tenten seemed to notice as well and began asking him about it. Lee made the mistake of looking right up at us, telling us that our cover was blown. We threw a volley of shuriken down. Then we jumped out of the tree limbs with blood-curdling screams, all of us save Sakura. Naruto rushed at Neji, as did I. Sasuke went for Lee again. Sakura just sort of walked over to Tenten. "Don't mind them, they're just playing a game," Sakura said. Tenten was confused. Game? Sakura nodded. "Since we're it, they decided they wanted to be predators, so they're trying to take your scroll as a trophy?" "Boys are so stupid," Tenten said. "Yeah, you better keep it close just in case, just to make sure they don't accidentally steal it." "It's okay," Tenten said. "It's safe right here." She tapped her side and then realized her mistake as Sakura blindsided her with a fist to the jaw. Sakura looted her unconscious body and took the scroll. I, on the other hand, had already lost all movement in both of my arms. Apparently Neji had access to pressure point techniques or something like that. Naruto was in far worse shape. He could barely stand on just one foot. At this point, Lee and Sasuke were going toe-to-toe, evenly matched. Seeing us though, he broke free from the fight and came to our rescue. Using his Sharingan, he noticed our chakra points had been closed. He knew what Neji's whole shtick was with one glance. As Neji turned around to strike Sasuke, Sasuke used his own taijutsu prowess to push Neji's hand out of the way before striking out at the elbow, snapping his arm at the joint. Neji let out a cry as Sasuke dislocated Neji's knee next. Lee came in from behind with incredible strength, having opened his gates. Sasuke couldn't dodge and was smashed and knocked into a tree. "Guys, I think we're taking this too far," I shouted as I looked at Lee coming at me. I don't know if it was a sudden flash of genius or perhaps I simply gave into instincts, but I used my crystal release on my body to form a dense armor. I was struck by Lee, but the force of his attack was dulled by my crystals. Naruto tried to attack, but just fell over because he couldn't move anymore. Sasuke came up from the tree he was knocked into and proceeded to strike out at Lee. Lee focused on Sasuke again. I began slowly walking toward Neji. Neji raised a hand to defend himself. I wasn't planning to attack though. "Sakura, come over here and help me. We need to reset Neji's arm." She walked over toward them. "Just let us help you," I said. "So you can blindside me like you did to Tenten? I think not. I don't require your help," he said as he forced his knee back into joint and stood. "You're all going to be left drooling when I'm finished with you." I took a step back. Sasuke was getting pummeled by Lee. Despite the fact that we had the numbers advantage, they had the skills. I cursed. If only my arms could move better, but thinking about what I had done with Lee, I wondered how much I could actually do that. I didn't have my arms, but I did have my legs, so I could still attack. I focused my chakra and began to coat my body in crystal armor to defend it. As Neji came in to strike, his attack bounced off, unable to reach my chakra points through this armor that was spreading his chakra across the crystals. I began to kick at Neji. The longer we fought, the more I was getting feeling back into my arms. Eventually, I could move them again. At this point, Neji was not able to keep up. His knee was pretty much overextended and his arm was broken. He was getting worse as the battle went on, and I was getting better. Coming close to a tired Neji, I caught his last attack. He was unable to harm me at this point. I pushed him on the chest lightly, causing him to fall on his rear, tired. I knelt down. "Now that that's out of your system, let me help you." I carefully reached for his broken arm. I lifted it and popped it back into place. He let out a cry as I did, but didn't react. I then used my crystal release to form a makeshift cast for him to keep his arm immobilized. "I would say go to a doctor as soon as possible," I said. As for his knee, I formed a bit of a crystal brace for it and even made a crystal crutch. Seeing this, Lee seemed to lessen his attacks. His body was tired from using his gates, and Sasuke was left flat on his back. As we all stood there in silence, we nodded in respect to one another. We were too tired to keep fighting, so we decided to rest. We all cooked a small meal and conversed, learning a little more about each other. Tenten was still fairly sore about how Sakura had given her a taste of knuckle sandwich surprise, so those two were at each other's throats, but for the most part, we got along well. Sasuke and Neji were both tending to their wounds, and I was using my first aid kit to make sure Sasuke had escaped without any broken bones. Thankfully, it seemed like he had, though he did have a pretty rough concussion. Lee was the best for wear of all of his team, only having minor muscle strain from his technique. We all shared a meal together and promised to settle it in the morning when everyone had a bit of rest. That being said, at about 3 a.m., we got the hell out of Dodge and left them behind. I felt bad lying to them like that, leaving them in such a state and banking off their respect for us only to betray their trust, but hey, we were playing the part of shinobi. That being said, I left them a note of good luck before we left. We'd eventually be stopped by Orochimaru. I don't remember much from that battle as I passed out fairly quickly beside Sakura. When I came to, Orochimaru was gone and Sasuke was unconscious. We retreated to a nearby notch in a tree where we would let Sasuke rest, but as he did so, we were soon attacked by Dosu and his teammates. They said that they had made us a promise and were here to make good on it. That promise, I knew, was to kill us, but they hadn't realized yet that I had a new technique that would help me protect myself. As Naruto rushed out there, I coated myself in crystal for some armor. I stepped out, saw them, and began to blitz them immediately. But Dosu had a plan that I couldn't expect. From a distance, he calibrated his gauntlets, setting the intonation and pitch. He then cranked the volume. The sound vibrated within my chest. I could feel it. I was already getting sick. Worst of all, my armor was cracking. I was confused how this could happen, but then I realized that it was the same principle as using resonance to shatter glass. He rushed over and struck me with his gauntlet, shattering my armor and causing me to pass out. From there, things were dark, and I wasn't so sure what was going on. All I recall was hearing the sounds of shouting and intense fighting. When I came to, they were all gone, and we had their Earth Scroll to match the Heaven one we stole. Sasuke was awake now, but something seemed different about him. Together, we would rush through the forest toward the tower. Once we made it, we'd be congratulated and given time to rest. I was then informed about what had happened with Sasuke in the forest and about his curse mark. Despite our best efforts to get Sasuke to put his health first, he refused and continued on anyway into the third round, the exhibition matches. He would manage to defeat his opponent through pure taijutsu, and Naruto beat Kiba and Akamaru. Sakura would stalemate with Ino. The only one left to fight was me. When I looked up to see who I was facing, I was astounded to read that it said Gaara. From what I had seen of him, he was quite ruthless, and I had heard he set a record in the Forest of Death that surpassed even clan killer Itachi's. I feared what might happen. As we entered the arena, I was pretty terrified. He seemed to be calm. I would start by probing his defenses, finding that it was quick. His sand rose up to catch any attack I threw, so I decided to test out a new technique. This one I learned from Haku, I said, looking to my teammates in the stands. I weaved hand signs. Crystal release, demonic mirroring jade crystals. Suddenly, I formed a bunch of crystal mirrors. I was in no way as fast as Haku was, but I did practice merging this with the clone jutsu and had learned how to make mirror clones, so in a way, the attack could be faster than Haku. As Haku moved between mirrors at the speed of light, I was already there. I could launch simultaneous attacks from all directions at once. I tried this, hoping to get past that defense, but instead, Gaara raised a dome of sand to protect himself. Coming out of my mirrors, I knew that I wouldn't be able to hit him like I was with this technique, so I donned crystal armor in hopes of being able to simply smash through. And that's what I did. Putting on intense crystalline armor, I rushed forward like an armored titan and smashed into the sandy barrier separating him from me. I knocked Gaara out of his sand defenses. He managed to stand. He then went on the attack, attempting to smash me with various forms of sand-based weapons. Seeing me as a walnut that needed to be cracked, he formed a hammer out of the sand and attempted to do just that. He hit me a few times, and I felt the internal structure of my armor breaking down as cracks formed across it. I dodged out of the way of the next attack as Gaara approached me. I waited for him to try and hit me with another blast of sand. He was trying to get sand into the cracks of my armor to shatter it from the inside, but instead I released a blast of fire-style jutsu. The heat of this turned Gaara's incoming sand into glass, which was a crystal. I would use my crystal release to shatter the glass and then fill my armor's cracks with it, closing off any weak points that Gaara could use to harm me. But instead of seeing intimidation on Gaara's face, I saw a smile. Confused, I saw his hand clench. Suddenly, my armor shattered. He could still control his sand, even if it had become glass. Suddenly, I was struck with a powerful strike from his sand that knocked me up against the wall. I passed out. Gaara was dictated to be the winner, and I was sad to discover that my road to championship in the Chunin exams had come to an end. But I felt I had done well anyway, and everyone was sure to tell me that. After this, we were given a month off to train. I, on the other hand, just sort of watched the others train. I went to my own home that night and slept. Despite feeling depressed that I wouldn't become a Chunin, I was glad to know that I had at least made it that far. I decided to be proud of myself instead, and slept the sleep of the just. I woke up pleasantly in the afternoon. It had been a long time since I was able to sleep in till noon, and I could do it for the rest of the month. I was ecstatic. Maybe not becoming a Chunin wasn't so bad. Getting out of bed, I went through my daily hygiene rituals and got me something to eat. Exiting my house, I decided to go check up on the rest of the group. Sakura, like me, had been ejected from the exams due to her defeat at the hands of... well, it wasn't exactly a defeat. It was a mutual defeat, a stalemate, with Ino Yamanaka. All in all, Sakura wasn't taking it too hard, and it seemed like she too was enjoying life without responsibility this month, much like I was. After paying her a visit just to make sure she was as chipper as I was, I decided to head out and find Sasuke and Kakashi. Using my chakra sense, I pinged their pendants I gave them and proceeded to head out in that direction. It was a mountainous region. Sasuke was working his body to the bone. He was sitting there panting as I walked up. It seemed as if he was in the middle of a well-deserved rest. "Howdy, howdy, howdy, y'all," I said in the most upbeat way ever. Sasuke glanced up at me from the corner of his eye for a second before continuing to ignore me. "I see you're working hard," I said. Looking to Kakashi, I spoke. "How have you been today, sensei?" Kakashi raised a hand as to say he'd been struggling to teach Sasuke. "As good as I could be, I guess," he said flatly. "Well, it's better than the worst," I reminded him. My interest returned to Sasuke. I walked around him. My curiosity getting the better of me, I pulled the back of his collar down to see if I could see the curse mark, only for him to bat my hand away and cover the nape of his neck as if he were sensitive about someone seeing it. Of course, he wasn't, he just didn't like me pulling his collar down without permission. Looking back, Kakashi began to inform me of the situation, guessing that my question was about his curse mark. "Yeah, it's still there. We can't get rid of it, and he's not the only one who has this. We apparently have some experience with this in the village. Anko Mitarashi, one of Orochimaru's former pupils, has the same mark Sasuke does. It hasn't gone away in the years she's had it, so the same is likely true for Sasuke. However, it hasn't caused her any issues since we used the evil sealing method, which I proceeded to use on Sasuke. So long as he doesn't desire to use its power, he won't be able to. That should at least keep it from becoming worse than it is." I nod. "Well, I'm glad of that. That means that it shouldn't be an issue for Sasuke then. It means his career can continue without a hitch." "What about you, Ethan?" Kakashi asked. I pointed to myself. "Me?" Kakashi nodded. "What are your plans for the month? Surely you're not going to laze about and atrophy on me, right?" Honestly, I actually was planning to do that, but I couldn't tell Kakashi that. No, I got some training in mind. I was gonna work on my physical strength by hitting the gym. I was gonna work on my chakra reserves by practicing ninjutsu, along with working on my chakra control. Then I was gonna study. Kakashi smiled. "Wow, sounds like you're going to be doing quite a bit. I look forward to you displaying it to me by the end of the month. Team 7 has no place for slackers after all." I smiled. "Indeed," I said in agreement. I then placed my hands in my pockets. "Well, I don't want to get in the way of your training, so I think I'll just get out of your hair." I turned around and began to leave. Well, shoot. Now I actually had to train this month or I'd be a liar, and Kakashi would be very upset. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. Training would help me stay sharp, and just because I was training didn't mean I couldn't sleep in, so that was good at least. For now, I planned to see how Naruto's training was going. He was supposed to be training with Ebisu from what I'd heard, but that's not what I saw. "What in the world are you doing?" I shouted as I walked up on them. Naruto was with an older man who had white hair, wearing a red haori. The two of them were lurking behind the woman's bathhouse. How utterly deplorable. "Oh, hi Ethan, what's up? I was just coming to check on you. What are you doing?" Naruto looked back where he was facing. Well... He looked back and spoke honestly. "We're trying to see some ladies." I shook my head. "Naruto, get away from there." "What? Why?" "Because it's not right. Besides, you're 12. You're not even really old enough to be thinking about that stuff anyway." Naruto scoffed. "Bro, I've seen people die and been a part in killing them. I think I can handle seeing a boob or two. If anything, why don't you join us?" I was shocked. "Join you?" To be honest, the weakness of my flesh had me tempted, but I knew it was wrong, so I shook my head, commanding restraint over the primal urges that men had. "No, Naruto, I won't do it, and neither should you, and who the heck even is that?" "Oh, I'm Jiraiya. I'm apparently going to be Naruto's new mentor, and whoa, look at those!" Naruto's head suddenly turned to look. Darn, just missed it. I was starting to grow angry. "Alright, you two, that's enough. Get away from there before I call the cops on you." Naruto rolled his head back on his neck, knowing I would do it. "Ethan, why you gotta be a wet blanket?" "Because those women are someone's daughters, and they deserve better than to be stalked by a couple lecherous guys." Knowing the jig was up, Jiraiya also pulled away from the bathhouse and walked in my direction. Standing on the bridge where I was, we then proceeded to have a better conversation. "I assume Naruto's mentor was supposed to be Ebisu," I said, questioning what I'd been told. Naruto and Jiraiya looked to each other. Naruto spoke. "Well, it was going to be, but Jiraiya is going to be my mentor instead. He says he knows about me and says I have a power deeper that I don't know about. He's going to teach me how to tap into it." A new hidden power, I wondered. What could it be? I decided I'd stick close to them to find out. After all, I was supposed to be training too, so maybe this Jiraiya guy, if he wasn't lying to Naruto, could help me awaken it as well. "Interesting. You guys mind if I tag along?" Jiraiya scratched the back of his head. "I don't know about that." I was confused. "Why not, pervy sage?" Jiraiya looked over. "Well, I'm pretty pervy. And like you said, he seems like a wet blanket. You know what I mean. Naruto nodded. Yeah, but I owe him everything. I can hear you, you know, I said as I listened to them talk about me. Jiraiya crossed his arms. He can come then. But he has to know that he can't interfere with my training of you. And sometimes that training will include looking at women in bathhouses. We made our way to a more secluded location where there were no people and nothing but what seemed to be mountainous ranges and clefts in the earth. There I saw Jiraiya kill a man. Well, I thought I did. He knocked Naruto off into a ravine. I was shocked by this. You just killed him! I was up in arms at this time, already pulling kunai and readying my ninjutsu, but Jiraiya held his hands out. Just give it a second. Suddenly, Gamabunta appeared. I was confused. Wait, Naruto couldn't summon that before, I said. What's going on? That's when it was all explained to me. 12 years earlier, when the Nine Tails attacked the village, it was sealed away once again, this time into Naruto. This made Naruto the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, and this also meant that at any point in time, Naruto could summon the chakra and power of the beast to help him. I was astounded. I had no clue that such a power existed within Naruto like this. By the look on Naruto's face, it didn't seem like he did either, and it seemed like it scared him a little too. As the evening dragged on, I was tempted to just go home. After all, I didn't want to miss my shows. Tonight, they were airing an episode of DBZ that I was planning to use to explain why Kaba could not beat Gogeta 4, and I'll die on that hill, but after seeing the look in Naruto's eyes, I decided that I would just stream the episode later. I sat a bit closer to him. What you did today was super cool. I didn't even know you had that ability. Another tool in the box, am I right? Naruto somewhat curled up into a ball, sitting there hugging his knees. This was the form many people took when things were weighing heavy on their mind, a fetal position from which they seemed to admit that they felt helpless and vulnerable. I guess, he said in response to my statement. I took a deep breath in, but regulated how quickly I let it out, as well as the pitch of the hiss, knowing that even sighing could be seen as insensitivity when that wasn't my intent. Are you okay? I asked. Naruto was silent for a moment before coming right out and saying it. I don't know. The genuine nature of his voice told me that he wasn't being overdramatic. He truly wasn't sure about himself at this moment. Do you want to talk about it? I asked. Naruto began to play with the grass as we sat there. I didn't know it was inside of me all this time. There's a monster in me that I didn't know about. I listened to what he said and felt a little sorrowful for him. Frankly, Naruto, there's a monster inside of all of us. We just choose not to see it, and that's what makes it dangerous. This is different though, he said. I looked to him. Is it? Just earlier today, I fought against a monster inside of me. While you two were being perverted, my own monster told me to join you, but I had to tell it no. Telling yourself no can be really hard sometimes, but it doesn't give us an excuse not to. And for some people, that monster inside can be very dangerous. They have to be extra vigilant not to let it out, or it could hurt people. Mine is stronger than me though, he said. I let out a chuckle. Join the club, little brother. All of us screw up, and sometimes our monsters escape. Sometimes they make us do something bad, but that doesn't make us irredeemable. We only become our monsters when we refuse to fight against them. But this really is different, Ethan. I'm not talking metaphysically, I'm talking about a literal monster. One with a lot of chakra that can take over and hurt people. The monster that causes people to judge me, to hate me. I thought about what he was saying. My monster isn't any less real than yours, and the method of dealing with yours is the same, Naruto. You're in a better position now than you were before, because now you know what you are, and so you can take steps to ensure that it doesn't get out. I now know why I'm so hated. People know what I've done, what I am. And what have you done, I ask? Naruto, you were born different. You have a monster in you that's made mistakes, and those hurt by it show hatred toward you for that. But that doesn't mean you're beyond forgiveness. People tend to have a hard time forgiving. While we're supposed to, forgiving is a very hard thing to do. Forgetting is even harder. I've had people wrong me in the past, hurt people I love, people I called brothers and sisters once, now actively seeking harm against me, and the few friends I have left. I know what it's like, so I know that it's hard to forgive, but I do. Because in the end, the people who did me wrong, well, I still love them, even if they hate me, because they deserve it, and because I know I'm loved and forgiven for the mistakes I make. I'm far from perfect, but I know that I'm loved anyway. Naruto, do you know that you are loved? Naruto shook his head as tears began to drip from his eyes. I don't. I'm not loved. Nobody loves me. Sitting up on my knees, I looked at him. That's not true. You are loved. Sometimes you can't see it, and you think that it's not there, but it is. And you are. Let me show you where it's at so you can feel it. I hugged him. I'm in your life for a reason, Naruto. Someone put me here. There's a reason why I'm on Team 7 of all places, in such a strange position, no less, being the odd man out. The fifth wheel. Someone wanted me to meet you so I could tell you what they want you to know. You are loved. Naruto broke down into tears here. The sound of crying drew Jiraiya's attention, though he knew already that I had it covered and that it might have been a very sensitive topic, so he pulled back as to not interfere. I was considering going home tonight and just watching TV, but I think I'd rather stay here with you. I think you need someone to let you know how valuable you are, your true worth. As he gripped my shirt tighter, I could feel it growing more moist. I was a bit afraid that he was just going to soak completely through it and leave my shirt soggy, and considering that I wasn't going home, I couldn't change out of it. But as I felt him trembling with emotion in my embrace, I knew that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Looking up into the orange sky, I felt complete. Like for this moment alone, I was born, to remind a lost and tortured soul that the value that they thought they didn't have was greater than every blade of grass and every flower in the field. I felt truly alive. When I reminded Naruto about the worth of his life, I was reminded of the worth of my own. And though I was not speaking such to be haughty, I felt that this was my value, the thing that gave my life meaning, to show someone else that their life had meaning and that they were valuable. It brought me true bliss. Each of us were born into this world with a purpose, for a reason. Born of love, for love, to be loved. And even in the darkest of moments, when we couldn't see or feel this love, it was there, always surrounding us. Each morning, every flower was a kiss from someone who loved us, someone who wanted us, someone who would sacrifice everything for us. And I felt that my purpose, my calling, was to echo that to people, to point at each flower and say, that was created specifically to make you smile. I felt Naruto calming in my embrace, as I thought my shirt was thoroughly soaked through, but that was okay. I could deal with a little bit of the uncomfortability of this. After all, the feeling in my shirt was the feeling Naruto had been carrying around in his heart for a long time. If I could help bear it for him, to give him rest, I would gladly do so, and do so with a great burning fire. A passion to let him know that he didn't have to worry anymore. The night was great. Jiraiya had decided to camp out under the stars with us. That way we could enjoy the life we'd been given. It was one thing to experience life between four walls, under a roof, on a bed with a TV for entertainment, but so often we forget how simple life could be. Looking into the night sky, we entertained ourselves by talking about cool facts we learned, pointing out constellations, telling stories attached to them. It was a truly enriching experience, a good bonding moment between we three guys. Due to this, I was welcomed and included in the next day's training. Jiraiya would begin teaching us a cool new technique, the Rasengan. Reading the pattern of my hair, he told me that I had a dual chakra rotation. I had no clue what this meant. He explained to me that the way our hair swirled was indicative of which direction our chakra would swirl, and he said because I had competing swirls, it meant that my chakra would swirl in any direction perfectly well. It would be hard for me to go against the grain when forming my first Rasengan. He told me to sense which way the swirling felt best to me and try it that way. For me, I felt that swirling it clockwise in my hand would be best. So he began going over the process. He told us that we should learn by swirling the water within a water balloon. This honestly was a pretty tough thing for me to learn, but not nearly as tough as it was for Naruto. After all, I had a leg up with my chakra control. Of the two of us, I was the first to complete this step. Secondly came volume. We had to practice with something new, a rubber ball. This had no water in it. The purpose of this part of the training was to pop the ball with the force of our chakra. I was shocked by how difficult it was. Between bouts of training, we would continue trying to pop this ball. Days passed, and I seemed to be getting nowhere. Eventually, it popped. Well, not mine, Naruto's. Naruto had not only caught up with me, but surpassed me. Jiraiya explained that Naruto simply had more chakra than I. Naruto had already formed his first Rasengan by the time I managed to pop my ball. I began trying to catch up as well, and managed to create my own Rasengan. I had pretty much perfected the style, as I could form one by myself. Naruto, however, required usage of a shadow clone to do it. That being said, I didn't flaunt it over him. He seemed upset that I could do it so easily, but I explained that it was simply a part of my natural strength. I was good at chakra control. Naruto, on the other hand, was naturally gifted with deep chakra wells. This meant that he naturally would be able to surpass me if he honed his control. Naruto seemed satisfied with this. Despite that, Jiraiya felt our chakra reserves could stand to be deepened, so between training Naruto to naturally harness his Nine-Tails chakra at will, he also put us through strenuous training. Besides that, I began to read scrolls about various ninjutsu that would help me grow. I began trying to practice them, but I couldn't get very far very quickly. I looked into genjutsu as well and learned about so many cool techniques. Despite the fact that I couldn't cast them yet, I at least understood the principles, such as the Temple of Nirvana technique, as well as some of the other techniques used by genjutsu users and Sharingan users. I realized many of the techniques are based on the victim's perception of things, that being how they see it. That led me to a wonderful idea. Using my crystal release, I formed a pair of sunglasses that were made from a tinted crystal. They were formulated so I could see things, but that they would alter what I saw just enough to keep me from being cast under ocular genjutsu, particularly by Sharingan users and those who increase the potency of their own genjutsu with the Byakugan. This, I was sure, would help me in the long run. As the month of training reached its end though, I lamented that noontime waking up days were going back to being rare. That being said, there was no way I was going to miss the upcoming bouts, particularly Sasuke's. I hadn't spent much time with him during our month of training, so I was interested to see what progress he had made. Naruto's bout was first though, and all in all it was quite easy for him. He had grown exceptionally during the month of training he got. His opponent was no match. But then came the piece de resistance of this second round of exhibitions, the thing the people had come to see. The last Uchiha versus the bloody sand demon. People were already casting bets on who would win. I was gonna pull for Sasuke regardless. Sasuke took his sweet time, being nearly disqualified for it. But given that everyone wanted to see this battle the most, special exceptions were made for him. He would show up. Like before, Gaara would use his sand shield to protect himself. I recalled my battle with Gaara and still felt the headache I got from it. Sasuke continued probing the shield with attacks. "Come on, Sasuke, come on," I said as I watched. It was then that Sasuke displayed something, a technique I didn't understand. He held his hand down as it was covered in electrical output. "What is that?" I asked. Kakashi, who at some point had snuck up behind Naruto, and I spoke. "That's his new signature technique, the Chidori." I was shocked, no pun intended. Wow, he's got a new signature move too? Sasuke rushed forward. I was blown away by the speed it afforded him, as well as the piercing power it would then display. The attack punched a hole clean through the sand, wounding Gaara. Gaara seemed to freak out. He looked as though he was losing his mind, though I was half convinced that he already had. He just felt so weird when I first met him. At about that time, something strange happened. A bomb went off in the viewing box of the Hokage. I saw it, as did everyone else. It was then that Kabuto cast the Temple of Nirvana technique. Anyone who looked at the feathers would immediately fall asleep. Well, almost everyone. I was wearing my specially made glasses at that moment. That being said, having studied genjutsu a bit, I closed my eyes for good measure, just in case the glasses failed. But it wasn't the same for everyone. Most everyone was put to sleep, even Naruto. I tried shaking him awake, but he was out cold. Looking over to the side, I saw that Sasuke too was awake. Oto Nin began to attack whatever shinobi had not fallen asleep yet. Gaara and his siblings appeared. They were apparently part of this, though they seemed to be attempting to escape. I jumped down into the arena, as did Shino Aburame. We rushed to Sasuke. Together we three set out to follow Gaara and his siblings. As we did so, Kankuro would peel off to protect his team, with Shino electing to stay behind to defeat him. Sasuke and I would continue our pursuit of Temari and Gaara. Eventually, Temari would also stay behind to fight against us, but with the combined efforts of Sasuke and myself, she too would be defeated. It was Gaara we were after. I was a bit nervous about it, but Sasuke was not. He was itching to fight. Once we finally caught up to Gaara, he seemed to lose most all of his faculties. Half of his body took on the form of a creature. He had been rumored to be a legendary sand demon, but as I looked at him, I realized that he wasn't any different from Naruto. Gaara had a monster like all of us, but unlike Naruto, Gaara let his do as it pleased, turning him into a monster in every sense of the word. Sasuke looked at me, and I at him. I would coat myself in crystalline armor to give me durability. Sasuke would then rush in with an attack. His attacks were doing well, and they were connecting with Gaara. I came in with attacks too. Gaara would knock me back though. The force of his attack, however, was more than enough to crack my shell. I sat there in awe of his true power, where in one shot he nearly took me down. Rising back up to my feet, I formed a Rasengan in my hand. I watched as Sasuke used his Chidori again, but amazingly his attack missed. Sasuke, knowing he had missed, knew he couldn't logically use Chidori again. Worse still, his position was bad. He had missed Gaara and now stood back against him. Gaara's speed had increased quite a bit to the point where he could dodge a Chidori. With that speed, he turned to finish Sasuke while his back was turned. But I would have none of that. I was already moving by the time Sasuke's Chidori missed. I ran up the side of a tree with my Rasengan in hand, my crystalline armor glowing in the sunlight. As Gaara moved to finish Sasuke, I jumped from the tree and planted my Rasengan right into the boy's ribs. I knew I had to have broken a few of them, not to mention that energy would likely really mess up his internal organs. Gaara was launched away like a Smash character at 180%, colliding with a tree. He hit the ground hard. I then walked to Sasuke, who caught himself on the ground. "You okay?" Sasuke nodded and fist bumped with me. "Yeah, thanks for the quick save." I smiled. "No problem." We then began to walk toward Gaara. Gaara coughed and gagged, heaving up blood. I felt bad knowing that I hurt him like this. He may have been a villain, but I didn't wish to kill him. I knelt down. "Surrender now and we'll take you back to Konoha. We'll take you to a doctor. They can heal you." "Get back, Ethan," Sasuke said. I looked back at Sasuke and then at Gaara, who was foaming at the mouth in a literal fashion. Gaara stood and rushed toward me with great speed. Knowing he needed the Chidori again, Sasuke would call upon his curse mark for help. This allowed him to stress into a Chidori. It was weaker than normal, but it would work. Sasuke rushed forward to attack Gaara first and defend me. I saw the two pass me by quickly. For a moment, both stood there. Gaara then coughed up blood and fell to the ground. Sasuke, on the other hand, also coughed blood and he fell to his knees. I rushed to him. "Sasuke, are you okay?" He sat there and covered a wound he'd received. He pulled his hand away to examine it. I'm fine. It's not that deep." "Look out!" the voice of Naruto shouted as he and Sakura began to catch up. I saw Gaara rushing forward again. This time his arm formed into a thick lance made from sand. Seeing him heading for Sasuke, I quickly pushed Sasuke out of the way and tanked the shot with my armor. I put a fist into Gaara's face, knocking him back. I smiled. I have gotten stronger, I thought. It was then that I was overcome with lightheadedness. I looked over to see Naruto running toward me, Sakura covering her mouth in horror. Sasuke sat there, eyes widened in shock. "What's going..." I suddenly coughed up blood. I looked down and realized I hadn't tanked the shot. I saw the remains of the sand-forged lance protruding through my abdomen. As the lance faded to dust before my eyes, the blood it had been soaking up was now free to leak out. I fell back against a tree to support myself as I watched the blood exit from my shattered armor. My chakra no longer flowing, my armor fell from my body as I began to slide down the tree, leaving a trail of blood on the bark. Naruto reached out to me. "Ethan!" I sat there and looked up at him. Sakura rushed over. "I need a cloth," she shouted. Naruto quickly took off his orange jacket and handed it over. She pushed the cloth against my stomach to stop the bleeding, even pushing it deep into the wound. I let out a groan and let my feet kick as the pain began to echo out. Is Sasuke okay?" Sasuke was unable to move due to his fatigue. Naruto took my hand. "Naruto, it hurts," I said. I was unable to stop the tears from running down my cheeks. The only thing I could think about was how I was dying. I didn't want to die. There were still so many things I wanted to do. Naruto, gritting his teeth, turned around to face Gaara. Gaara would be rising up once again. "You think you're stronger than me? You think you can hurt me? I'll show you," he shouted. He then cast a genjutsu over himself and suddenly he'd pass out. From there, he'd begin to form a massive sand-based tanuki. Naruto looked back at me. I reached out to grip his hand again. As he went to grab my hand though, it dropped as I slipped into unconsciousness. For Naruto, it must have been the scariest thing in the world. He must have thought me dead. The last thing I saw was the overwhelming might of the Nine Tails boiling outward. Naruto would have taken on his version 2 cloak and would proceed to run up the side of Shukaku before finding Gaara at the top. He would shred the poor boy to pieces, killing him viciously. The sand beast would turn to dust below him as he would fall down. Naruto would howl like a rabid fox before turning his anger on the others. He began making his way towards Sakura, the air around him daubed in bloodlust. As he approached, Sakura held out her hands. "Naruto, stop!" she shouted. He pushed her to the side and came to my side once more. Taking my hand in his own, his form would fade. His skin a blood-red color, his flesh burned and partially destroyed. The red of muscle and tendon could be seen below. He too would pass out. It wouldn't be too long until we were all found by the shinobi of Konoha. Naruto was in rough condition, but he was alert by this time, his body having gone into overdrive, using the power of the Nine Tails to heal. I wasn't so lucky though. My wounds were deep, and I had lost a lot of blood. It was a miracle I was even alive at all. For the most part, I saw nothing, heard nothing, felt nothing. It was like being asleep, but without dreaming. I had no concept of time, but that was okay. As it turned out, I'd been out for a month. When I woke up, my body had been mostly healed. A scar remained where my wound had been, but I was alive, somehow. Waking up, I saw that Sakura and Naruto were both there with me, sleeping on either side, my hand in theirs. I was so touched by this turn of events. I smiled weakly as my body continued to wake up from its coma. I didn't wish to move as that might wake them. I was enjoying this. It made me feel so loved that even while I was unconscious, they wouldn't leave me, that they needed to hold my hand and sleep in my hospital room like this. We weren't friends anymore, we were family. Eventually, they began to wake up. Sakura was the first to stir. Her ecstatic shout and quick hug of me jolted the bed enough to startle Naruto awake. Naruto saw me alert and joined in on the hug. "Careful, careful," I shouted. My body had been sore from laying in the same position, and I felt weak. My body was so sensitive, but despite that, I was glad to receive a hug. That being said, I wasn't sure at this moment how long I'd been out. It was then that the doctors told me that it had been 4 weeks. I was shocked. They told me that with the injuries I sustained, I wouldn't have survived if Naruto and his version 2 cloak hadn't given me some chakra to begin the repair process. Looking at Naruto, I gave him a new hug. "I owe you my life, Naruto." Naruto shook his head. "No, we owe you ours." The hug lasted for a few seconds longer. Then, when Naruto pulled away, I asked him, "What's been happening since I was out?" Naruto looked down and then looked to Sakura. "Well, Hiruzen. He was killed in the attack." I was shocked. "He was killed?" Naruto nodded. Tears formed in my eyes. Hiruzen would often visit me to bring me my allowance. When he wasn't busy, he'd even spend time with me, bring gifts, and play with me. He was like the village's own personal grandfather, so this hurt. I choked my emotions back though. There'd be time to unpack it all later. It was then that Naruto told me that he had helped Jiraiya recruit a new Hokage. Her name was Tsunade, and she used to be to Jiraiya what Sakura was to me. It was interesting indeed, but I was more distraught about Hiruzen's death than anything. In the upcoming days, I would come to terms with it while getting back into shape. I'd be released from the hospital and would get some time to return to my home and rest if I so decided. A week to do whatever I wanted. That being said, on my first day off, I didn't sleep. I'd been in a coma for 4 weeks. I'd slept enough. I stayed up all night watching TV and catching up on forum debates. That being said, the forums had long since moved on from a meme. They were now talking about Hiruzen as well as the attack. So many lives lost. A lot of my online rivals had lost people. It was then that we showed our compassion for one another, helping each other out. A couple days passed and I was getting back into shape. It was then that word reached me. Sasuke had left the village. I was confused why. Sakura said it had to do with his brother and his need for vengeance, and how he had to leave everything and everyone behind for it, leaving to join Orochimaru, the terrorist who had killed so many people. I was shocked. I found it hard to believe. There was no way he was seriously gonna do this. A squad was being developed to go catch him. It would consist of Shikamaru, Naruto, Kiba, his Ninken, Choji, Neji, and Rock Lee. Lee had volunteered. Shikamaru originally wasn't planning to bring him, but considering Lee volunteered, he decided it was better to be safe than sorry. I too would join the group, and together we would rush off to try and stop Sasuke from doing the unthinkable. As we traveled, they used me to keep a bead on Sasuke. After all, I could still sense the pendant I'd given him. However, as we moved forward, various assailants who were transporting him would peel off to attack us. First was Jirobo, who Choji decided to stay behind to fight. Then was Neji versus Kitamaru. Kiba and Akamaru would be stopped by Sakon and Ukon, and lastly Shikamaru would volunteer to stay behind to stop Tayuya. Last of all, I, Naruto, and Rock Lee would rush off to find Sasuke, growing closer and closer. We had seen him for but a moment, but he fled. It was then that we'd all be stopped by Kimimaro, letting Sasuke pass on by. Lee offered to stay behind to fight Kimimaro while Naruto and I went for Sasuke, but I refused. Something's not right here. This guy feels exceptionally strong. I think you'll need me more than Naruto does. Lee would accept my offer of protection, and Naruto would disengage to continue his pursuit. As Lee and I walked around, Kimimaro would begin to form blades made of bone. Seeing this, I would coat myself with crystal armor to protect myself. Lee would enter a fighting stance. We'd both rush at Kimimaro only for him to expertly dodge our strikes. The bone dagger Kimimaro had played across my armor, leaving a scratching sound behind, though no true damage was done. Something both Kimimaro and I recognized. He was probing my defenses and I was probing his offense. I felt as though Lee and I had the advantage. "Press the attack," I told Lee. He and I ran at Kimimaro once more, attempting to strike him. As we did so, Kimimaro would form a bone shield to catch our attacks. My strike had little effect on his shield, nor did Lee's. Stepping back, I began to reformulate my plan. I weaved hand signs. "Crystal style, demonic mirroring jade crystals." I formed multiple mirrors around Kimimaro. I knew he had the ability to create a shield, but I didn't think he could create a dome as Gaara had. Merging with my mirrors, I began throwing crystal senbon at him from all directions. He dodged a few, took others head on, and shattered even more. Growing tired of this, he let out a roar as his entire body tensed. He fired out in all directions bone spikes into all of the mirrors, breaking them all at once. I flew back out of my mirror just as it shattered. I hit the ground hard. Lee had skillfully dodged the AoE attack. He stood there and attempted to attack again. He kept pressure on Kimimaro as I got my bearings. While Kimimaro was too busy dealing with Lee, I ran up behind him and planted my foot in the side of his head, sending him sliding. As he rose to his feet again, he looked at us with a hint of a smile. Impressive. I didn't expect such power from Genin. He would then activate his Cursed Seal of Earth and advance it to stage 2. He would smile as he formed a bone lance in his hand. A shiver ran down my spine as I looked at it and fell backwards. Lee looked at me and then stepped between me and Kimimaro. "Are you okay, Ethan?" he asked, sounding out every syllable to perfection. I was shaking. I don't like that lance." Lee looked back at me and then forward. "Is it because of your prior experiences with Gaara?" he asked. I nodded. Lee understood. "Do not worry. I will take it from here." Lee then ditched his weights and began to enter his upper gates. He opened them all the way to 5. His speed increased, and he moved so fast I could hardly keep up. It seemed even Kimimaro was having a hard time. I watched as the two dueled, but Lee's edge began to vanish as fatigue set in. Kimimaro began to smile, knowing he'd gained the advantage. I saw him going in for a killing blow. "No!" I shouted. I was running before I even knew what I was doing. I jumped up into the air. Kimimaro turned around and saw me, raising his bone lance to stab me as well, but before he could, I instinctively formed a crystal lance. My lance skid across his as I traveled down toward him. Kimimaro was shocked by this, but had no time to dodge. It was then that my lance pierced Kimimaro's chest, killing him on the spot. Pulling back, I saw the blood on the lance and dropped my armor immediately. I stood there and looked at the body for a moment. I just killed somebody. The adrenaline was intense, but as the idea of what I did set in, it caused me to puke as I started to cry from guilt. Lee would comfort me. "It is okay, Ethan. He would have killed me had you not done this. You had your hand forced. You did nothing wrong. This is the shinobi world." The realization I had all that time ago when doing the bell test with Kakashi was correct. I would have to compromise my morals to survive in this world. As the adrenaline began to leave me, I sat down and rested. Lee covered the body so I didn't have to see it as rain began to set in. Not long after, Kakashi would appear with his Ninken, tracking us. "Ethan," he called. I looked up. "Yes?" He looked at me and saw how pale I was. "Are you okay?" he asked. Lee pointed to the body. Kakashi nodded. "I see. First kill is always the hardest, but it gets easier." "I don't want it to get easier," I said flatly. Kakashi took a second to process this. "I understand, but you'll be grateful for it if you ever have to do it again." Kakashi then looked around. "Where's Naruto?" I pointed in a direction. "With Sasuke." "Sorry, Kakashi. The rain is washing away the smell. I'm losing track," Pakun said. "I can lead you," I said. Kakashi told me to lead the way. I began to sense the location of the pendants I'd given Naruto and Sasuke, but something was wrong. Naruto's was now apart from Sasuke's. "We need to hurry," I said. Moving through the forest, our clothes drenched by the deluge, we made our way to the open water of the final valley. There, we saw Naruto laying face up in the water, unconscious. Kakashi walked over and picked up Naruto. "He's still alive," Kakashi said. I immediately turned and ran in a different direction. "Ethan, wait!" Kakashi shouted. I couldn't though. I felt it. Sasuke was nearby. I ran into the forests deeper. I came to a stop. Sasuke was somewhere nearby. I looked left and right and began checking. It was then that I saw it. Laying in the grass was the blue agate necklace I'd created for Sasuke. I walked over to it and picked it up as Kakashi, still carrying Naruto on his shoulder, appeared behind me. I looked at it closely. "Ethan?" Kakashi asked. I looked back at him. He left it behind. Kakashi looked at me as I held up the necklace. "I made this for him to show that we were friends." My face contorted in frustration and anger. I looked up at Kakashi, my eyes spilling over with tears. How could he just throw it away? How could he throw me away? Kakashi looked down, not sure what to say, so he did the best thing he could think of and walked up to me to wrap his arm around me. Pressing my face into his flak jacket, I let out all of my emotions, a shaky groan and a grunt of anger that turned into the sobbing of someone who had simply had enough of this situation. The day was hard. I killed someone for the first time, and without support, Shikamaru, Kiba, and his Ninken Akamaru had perished against the Sound 4. Naruto had been hurt too, and last of all, I had come to terms with the fact that Sasuke didn't want me anymore. We had been thrown away by him. It hurt so bad, and as I cried, I clutched the necklace tightly, as if a part of the one I had already begun to view as my brother were still embedded into it. Kakashi would let me sob and would gently pat me on the back. Deep down, Kakashi was hurting too, but he didn't have time to cry. He had 2 young boys who looked up to him, in deep distress right now. It took more than just being smart to be a leader of a squad of genin. It took responsibility and heart. Kakashi was more to us than just a teacher. To me, he was a father. Someone who taught me and loved me, protected me, helped provide for me. He was everything I wanted to be and more. I felt ashamed to be crying in front of him, especially knowing that doing so was against the Shinobi Handbook provided to us by Konoha, but all the same, as hurt as I was glad that he was there to see it, because at this point, I felt like he was the only one who could console me. I was laying in bed. It was about 8 a.m. Despite that, I hadn't slept at all. Naruto was released the day he was brought in due to his tailed beast healing any possible wounds. He was as healthy as could be. I too had been released, but I was just so sad. I had given Sakura Sasuke's necklace to help console her, but I have to admit I'd never seen her cry that much. I'd gone home that night to sleep, but despite everything I tried, I just couldn't. My mind couldn't remove itself from Sasuke and his departure. Sasuke was one of my closest friends. I thought back to our time in the Chunin exams, our time facing off with Haku and Zabuza, how he had brought me something to eat after Dosu attacked me, how we'd played Alien vs. Predator. I recalled how he took wounds for me, how I nearly died for him, and yet he threw all of that away. Me, Sakura, Naruto, he threw all of us away, and that hurt so bad. Besides these thoughts, I couldn't even get Kimimaro out of my head. I wasn't trying to be a wuss about it, and indeed, I did know what I was getting into. I knew that joining a military force, there was a chance I'd have to kill someone someday. But even still, it hurt to know that I actually did have to do it. I had blood on my hands. Those thoughts were driving me insane. Tossing and turning all night, TV on, TV off, snack, milk, open curtains, closed. I tried everything I could to clear my mind, but it refused. So I just laid there until well into the morning. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I told myself that if I could only get to sleep now, I'd sleep until at least 2 p.m. But that time never came. As I lay there, the sound of birds outside my window reminding me that it was time to get up, I was startled by the sound of a doorbell. Not even caring that I was still wearing my Goku pajamas, I went to the door and opened it. What is it? It was Naruto and Jiraiya. "Hey Ethan, can we come in?" they asked. I looked back at my bed and weighed my thoughts on whether I'd be able to go back to sleep or not. Deciding it was probably out of the cards for me, I opened up the door and let them in. They stepped in just as I was turning on the light. "Oh, I hope we didn't wake you," Jiraiya said. I shook my head. "Nah, you're good. I was just getting up to get breakfast anyway." "Oh, can we join you?" Naruto asked. I waved around myself. Free country. They stepped in and sat down. They were excited to see what kind of delicious meal I would share with them. I'd plop down a Pop-Tart on each of their places before opening one up for myself. Naruto and Jiraiya looked at each other and then down at the Pop-Tarts. Naruto sniffed his. "Ooh, s'mores." We began to eat. Jiraiya looked around. "So tell me, how have you been holding up?" I shrugged. "That bad, huh?" Naruto said. Jiraiya kicked Naruto into the table, to which Naruto let out a muffled ouch. Jiraiya looked at me. "I know it's tough. You lost a lot of friends. Shikamaru, Kiba and his dog, Sasuke, and then you had to take your first life." I sat there looking at Jiraiya. "Thanks for reminding me, pervy sage." "That's the thing though, Ethan," Jiraiya said. "You shouldn't keep thinking about these things." Halfway through my second Pop-Tart, I took a swig from my juice box. "I know that, Jiraiya, but you can't afford a guy at least 24 hours to grieve. I know I gotta move on eventually, but is right now really that time?" "Listen, kid, you never truly move on when people you love leave. But the longer you dwell on it, the more it hurts. And I highly doubt any of your friends would want you torturing yourself over something they all decided to do on their own. That's why I came to invite you to something." "Invite me to something? Invite me to what?" I asked. Jiraiya and Naruto looked at each other with a smile. "If it's another bathhouse..." No, Jiraiya said, cutting me off. "Me and Naruto are going out into nature. We're gonna train at my place. Since you and he don't really have any immediate responsibilities, I thought maybe you could join us." I thought about it. Well, I kinda do have responsibilities. I'm a genin now. Jiraiya shook his head. "Nope, I already asked Kakashi. He said you and Naruto are free. Heck, he even tried to push Sakura off on me too, but she didn't want to come. Said she had other plans for training. So at this point, your only responsibility is to get as strong as you possibly can. And trust me, I think I can help you." I think about it. I look back at my bed, my mostly dark room, and down at my plate. Honestly, I had nothing better to do, and considering that I'd be doing it alone, that was probably going to be a lot of moping, and I decided it'd be better to try, to take my mind off my troubles and make something better of myself. So even though I was in no mood to say yes, I said yes anyway. Jiraiya told me to gather some things I would need, anything I didn't think I could live without, as he didn't know how long it would be until we came back, so I grabbed some things I knew I'd need. Some video games, a couple books, a buttload of manga, and a little plush fox named Tenku, a treasure given to me by someone very dear. Changing into something better to wear, we hit the bricks and began making our way out toward the endless horizon. Traveling through the woods, over the hills, past towns, and all manner of things, I began to realize why it was such a bad idea not to sleep before a big trip. Reaching Jiraiya's house, I explained my situation, and he understood. Said that we needed to get adjusted anyway, so he made a quick meal for us, gave me first use of the bath, and then let me hit the hay. The sun hadn't even set yet, but screw that, I was sleeping. And I planned to do it for close to 14 hours. I slept hard, though my dreams were every so often plagued by nightmares, but I never woke up once, and instead gained a sort of lucidity that allowed me to change my dreams however I desired. The next day came and I woke up starving. Getting up, I changed into my better clothes and journeyed into the kitchen to find Jiraiya with a fresh pot of coffee and some breakfast. Opting instead for juice, I sat down, said a blessing, and proceeded to eat the ham dog out of some bacon, eggs, and rice. Once I was finished with that, I looked up at Naruto and Jiraiya. "So, what's the plan today?" Jiraiya smiled nefariously. He took us out and proceeded to train us hard, working us to the bone. The way we trained was intense, but logical. He would have us build up our muscles one day, that being heavy physical training, and then he'd give us a day to study various techniques and our chakra control. This went on for a while until we reached the proper physical aptitude. Our bodies were strong, and because of that, our chakra had also seen quite the increase in power. But that wasn't the end of it. No, it was but the beginning. We were still young, Naruto being only 12, I a year older. We had yet to truly tap into the true growth potential in our bodies. So as we reached a good place in our practices, things got switched to keep our muscles off guard. We ended up doing our workouts backwards. Then after we got used to that, we did our workouts first and last, second and second last, third and third last, and then when that finished, we got a brand new set to do. I thought I was gonna die. Some nights and some mornings I wished that I had, but Jiraiya, as tough as he was, kept our spirits up with jokes and with his smile. To be frank, if one forgot that he was a womanizing old bastard who peeped on girls in the bathroom, you might find him to be the wisest sage of them all. But it seemed the Roshi trope was alive and well. Eventually, he began to teach Naruto how to control his Nine-Tails chakra better. And given that Naruto was learning something powerful and I wasn't, Jiraiya decided to teach me something as valuable as the various cloaks that Naruto was working on. Perhaps something even better. Sage Mode. He introduced to me the concept of senjutsu, something that I had hardly read anything on. But considering what he was saying, it all started to make sense. He said that considering the chakra control I had naturally received from my time practicing my crystal release, that it made me more likely not to fail. That being said, he told me not to get a big head because the consequences for failing were fatal. So I decided to follow my mentor's words and not allow myself to be compromised by my natural abilities. I managed to complete my training of Sage Mode, especially when Fukasaku and Shima got involved, but sadly, Naruto couldn't. Instead, Naruto could only perfect his version 1 cloak, as his version 2 cloak was as dangerous for Naruto as it was for everyone else. That landed Naruto and Jiraiya in the hospital. While they were resting though, I kept up my training with Fukasaku and Shima, and even developed a close relationship with them. They were so kind and wise, they reminded me of grandparents, and so when I told them that I had none, the first thing they wanted to do was forge a contract with me. As the contract was written up, they told me that no matter where I was or what I was doing, if I ever needed them, they could call me with this. All they needed was for me to put a smudge of blood down to call them. So I nicked my thumb with a kunai and added my blood to the contract. Pleased with it, Shima took my hand and told me that this made us blood relatives now. I won't lie, I cried. I cried a lot. To finally have real family was, well, it was awesome. Not to say that Team 7 wasn't my family, but Fukasaku and Shima were both officially my grandparents. This contract was a proof of our bond. Essentially, adoption papers and proof that they wanted me. This technically made Jiraiya an uncle to me, and Naruto a cousin. So in the span of a single moment, I went from having no family to a full family. It made me so happy. But as time passed, I grew and my strength increased. I honed my crystal release, being capable of new techniques and forming even more complex structures. I practically mastered Sage Mode to the point that I no longer even needed to worry about having webbed feet, though Jiraiya had taught me that there were some merits to using the imperfect variant. Words I kept close. But in what seemed like the blink of an eye, 2.5 years passed. Naruto was 16 now, and I was 17. Returning to the village, I was certain we could pass for Jonin now. Meeting back up with Sakura, we had the time of our lives. Kakashi would even seek to test us out, to see how far we had gotten in our training. And while it was high diff, we managed to beat him, proving to our most elite of mentors that we had indeed grown into fine shinobi. We enjoyed our time back by going out to dinner, all of us, and having a good catch-up. We learned that Sakura too had been receiving training from Tsunade, and now was more than just a powerful medical nin, she was a strong warrior in her own right, whose physical strength had far surpassed what was normal naturally. Her raw physical strength even seemed to surpass mine and Naruto's amazingly. That was something that sort of freaked us both out, considering that she was the scariest thing we'd seen up to that point. We had come to know her temper, and now with the strength to split stone, our poor noggins stood no chance. But as life went on, we were informed that the Akatsuki, a group I had only just heard about, had killed an old monk, and others had sought help from us. So Tsunade began putting together a team of 20. There was a spot open, as Asuma didn't have Shikamaru to take along with him. Considering who to add to the team, I volunteered. Asuma at first refused, as I wasn't a Chunin, which would usually make it against the rules, but Tsunade, under Jiraiya's recommendation, said that she would make an exception for the Genin trade by Jiraiya and herself, declaring us the next generation of Sannin. With that said, Asuma agreed. Giving me a flak jacket, I dressed up in my true shinobi attire. I finally felt like I was going places in my life and slowly achieving my dreams. But of course, my high was about to become a devastating crash. I witnessed the strength of the Akatsuki, Hidan and Kakuzu. They must have smelled my fear a mile away because they really started slathering on the occult and horror. Despite my best attempts, I could not save Asuma. I watched him die, bleeding out in front of me. I wasn't a healer. Panicking, I tried to staunch the bleeding. As I was hyperventilating, Asuma reached out to calm me. He told me that it was okay, that this was the cost of being a shinobi, killing and being killed. He asked me to light a cigarette for him. Pulling one from the blood-stained pack, I took his lighter and lit it. Taking one puff to get it started, I coughed from the unusual smoke, something that brought Asuma a pained cough. "It's not for everyone, kid." I put it in his mouth. He took a drag and let it out. He told me to give Kurenai his love. I asked what that meant and was told that they were in a relationship. I tried to be strong, but found it hard, knowing that I was going to have to inform a woman that the love of her life was dead. I nodded my head. "I'll tell her." He thanked me. He persisted for only a few moments more before joining his father, Hiruzen, in the afterlife. I felt so weak. Despite everything I had trained for, there were just some people I couldn't beat. What was I supposed to do in the face of true immortals? Hidan? Kakuzu? Whatever false god Hidan served had somehow bestowed upon him true, undying immortality. I had no clue how to beat that. Returning to Konoha, I knocked on Kurenai's door. I held Asuma's headband and one of his bladed knuckle dusters. She opened up. As soon as she did, I saw that she was pregnant, and despite it being my duty, I broke down again into tears. A baby was going to grow up without knowing its father, and a woman was going to have to raise that child as a single mother. Immediately, Kurenai knew what had happened. I tried to comfort her, but at that point, there was hardly any comforting me, so we just cried together, which was the best we could do to help each other. But after that, I informed Kakashi about how weak I was feeling. Kakashi spoke. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but growing is something that's never finished. So long as you live, you learn. So long as you fight, you grow stronger. I've sent Naruto out to start trying to make a new technique. These Akatsuki members are nothing to sneeze at, it seems. Rumors say 2 of them just tracked down and captured the regenerated One Tail. That, and now the death of Asuma, they're public enemy number 1. And the only way for us to defeat them is if we bring everything to the table." And so, Naruto and I would meet up by a waterfall. I asked him what he was going to try and do. He said that he was naturally very good with wind release, and Jiraiya told him the Rasengan was incomplete. He told me that he wanted to add a nature to the Rasengan, and that he planned to make it wind release. I decided to try and help him, although I felt that if wind release could be added, maybe something else could too. So I began working on adding my crystal release. Well, adding is a strong word. I ended up forming a new jutsu that didn't exactly add crystal release to it as much as I added a Rasengan to crystal release. I know that sounds like a real potato-potato situation, but trust me, it's different. And it was far easier for me to apply than it was for Naruto. Essentially, I would create a large crystal construct around my hand and then form a Rasengan within it. I would try expanding the Rasengan as the crystal tried to keep it contracted. I learned that if I kept funneling more and more chakra into the Rasengan until it popped inside of the construct, it would be ejected out of the tip, amplified by the precise cut of the gem, and be released into a blast of pure chakra. The denser the chakra, the more energy I could put into it, along with the shape of the construct changing the way that it was fired or the caliber of the weapon. I called it Crystal Release Rasen Rifle. The biggest issue was that it took a lot of chakra to use, and if I added too much, I would at best case overextend myself, and at worst case, I could actually die. So I had to be careful. We were then informed that the location of Hidan and Kakuzu had been confirmed and that we were to find and kill them. So Naruto and I mobilized. Both Naruto and I raced up to the front lines to help in the battle against Hidan and Kakuzu. Naruto said we should split up to help even the chances that our side might take out both Akatsuki members. I agreed to this, but then requested the chance to take out Hidan. Naruto looked at me. "Are you sure you want to do that?" he asked. "Hidan did kill Asuma in front of you. Are you in the right mindset?" I nodded. Hidan killed Asuma, but that shouldn't affect the state of things. He's a killer, And whether or not he'd killed Asuma in front of me or not, he needs to see justice. I think I have a chance to do that. Okay then, but be careful. He has some funky powers, I hear. I hugged Naruto. Naruto was surprised by this. Ethan? Ethan? Honestly, I hadn't said anything, but I was terrified. If for some reason my technique didn't work or I missed, chances are I would be killed. I had to play this perfectly or I would die. And if I died, I didn't want Naruto to walk away without knowing how much he meant to me. Perhaps Naruto knew that too. I felt him soften his posture and wrap his arms around me too. We'll see each other again. Later on, when this is over, we'll celebrate with some ramen, on me. I pat his back and pulled away. Sounds like a deal. Giving him a 2-finger salute, I turned and began to leave. Making my way toward where the battle against Hidan was taking place, I got there just in time to see him finish off the last of the Konoha nin who stood against him. Strong and powerful chunin, each of them eradicated, like they were nothing. He stood there with only one sleeve on, skin black as pitch, with only bone-like markings running across their surface. He held in his hand a bloody scythe that I could tell had been used to kill those around him. He turned and looked at me with a smile before speaking. Ah, another sacrifice to the great and powerful Jashin, he said, licking the blood from his scythe. He approached me, his head turning to the side. Do I know you from somewhere, he asked. I got into a fighting stance. Realization hit him as he smiled and nodded, as if it were something easy to place. Pointing to me, he said, I remember you. You're that kid from the last squad I dismembered. I can tell by the way you shake. Hidan looked around. Wow, you have really bad luck. Every hunting party you join gets killed. It's like you're cursed or something. I slapped my cheeks, trying to mentally prepare myself. I realized from the last battle that he can only cast his hex if he draws blood. To that end, I coated myself in crystal armor, something to protect myself. I then created a lance in my hands made of crystal as well. Surely he won't just stand there and take it, I said within myself. I need to wear him down, make him think I can't do much against him, and then surprise him with it. I circled around him. He didn't move, only smiling as his eyes followed me. The moment I got behind him, he jumped straight up into the trees where he hung like a bat. That armor makes you tough, sure, but it has a con. He paused for effect, as if allowing me to bathe in the terror of the mystery of my weakness. He then told me what it was in a hushed voice, hardly above a whisper. It's too heavy. Honestly, this was the truth. The weight of the crystals mixed with them building up near my joints did make it harder to move. Why would I need to be agile? To run away? No, I took this form to fight. The only one who looks like they're running away is you. I deeply regretted saying that. I impugned upon his pride. Now he would come at me with full force, and that's exactly what he did. With a fierce battle cry, he came down upon me. I blocked his attack with my lance and pushed him away. His speed was beyond mine currently. He had that right. He was running circles around me compared to my speed and heft. I caught his blade again, but his strength kept pushing me back. With a powerful swing of his blade, he struck me, cracking my armor. Put on as much crystal as you want. It won't stop me from getting to your blood. I was not doing well. Endurance, strength, technique, battle IQ, he was my superior in every way. This wasn't going well for me at all. I really, truly only did have one chance, my Rasen rifle. I began to reform the crystals around my arms, turning them into long, thick gauntlets. I didn't want him to know what I had planned though, so I continued fighting with these, hoping to trick him into thinking they were some new melee weapon. After a time, I began to form Rasengan in my hands within the gauntlets. I would enter Sage mode after calling back my meditating shadow clone. For a moment, my strength increased, and I managed to push him back some. Surely he thought this was my secret weapon. I hope he did. That way he would lower his guard. I pushed him back, channeling some of my extra chakra to repairing and maintaining the structure of the rifle itself. If I just kept beating it down, it would lose potency, but I didn't need a tailed beast killer, just a Hidan killer. Just as I did so, he managed to break through my shell and wound me. He pulled his scythe back and licked up my blood. With a smile, he cut the palm of his hand. I knew I didn't have much time. I would merge my two crystals together and get down to one knee. While I didn't have much time, this was good, as it meant he still had to stand still to draw out his circle. I just needed to finish this before he could draw it. I pushed as much chakra into the Rasen rifle as possible. I felt all of my chakra, save a small reserve, enter it. They glowed brightly, so much that I could barely see. I let out a battle cry as the light filled the forest around us. Nearby, even Kakuzu and Naruto stopped battling to notice the intense glow. With a roar, I poured my very soul into the blast. This is it, I shouted. My final flash, my last glow, my bright burn. If I die, don't let anyone say I didn't try. Hidan, I shouted. He stared at me. "Are you a man of faith?" I asked him. He looked at me with a smile. I then stared through my brow. "I challenge you and your god right now. If he's so great, then your immortality will shrug this off and he'll protect you, yeah?" Hidan's brow furrowed. "You dare impugn upon the might and power of Jashin?" "Please take the bait," I whispered inside myself. Hidan beat his chest. "My god is superior to anything you can throw at me. My immortality is infinite." I smiled. "Then hold still." My blast charged with a battle cry. I then released it all at once. Hidan ripped his other sleeve off to take it to the chest to prove his superiority. But the thing was, this was all a ruse. I knew that he was immortal, but I also knew this. He had little to no regeneration. I saw him lose his head once, and he had to sew it back on instead of growing a new one. Therefore, if I amputated every cell in his body, whether he lived or not would be inconsequential, as he'd be totally neutralized. As the blast hit him, he cried to Jashin to prove the might of his immortality, and laughed as the blast ate away at his body. But as he stood there, he realized that he was being completely erased, down to his very cells. "Even if my body's blown apart, my chakra is eternal," he shouted. "I don't care. Unless a ghost can actively fight in a war, I'd call you dead." Hidan realized the mistake he had made. His zeal for Jashin had just made him useless to the Akatsuki. Living, maybe. Useful, no. He would live as a disembodied red mist for eternity. That is, if even a red mist remained. The blast flew away with the force of an atomic weapon, bending trees like the winds of a Category 5 hurricane. The trees bent back, snapped, and seared in the heat, with a vacuum being left behind as even the oxygen and nitrogen atoms in the very air were eaten up, releasing along with my blast even more energy. The blast flew back and struck a mountain, passing through it, leaving behind a hole the shape and size of the blast. As the technique ended, I fell to my knees, no longer possessing any chakra to use. I looked down at my hands, blackened and charred, burned and steaming. My fingers twitched from the force of what I had done. My eyes were still adjusting from it. I was blinded by my own technique. All I saw was a big bright spot that completely took over my eyes, not even leaving any peripheral vision. I had no way of knowing if I had succeeded. I spoke. "Tell me, Hidan, did your god save you?" I heard only silence. I thought so. I proceeded to fall upon my side, passing out. I was unconscious for a while until being transported back to Konoha General. Sakura herself tended to my wounds. My eyesight returned on its own, the flash only causing temporary blindness. My chakra reserves were also given a transfusion to help me get back on my feet. My arms were deeply seared, but Sakura's technique over the course of the next few days really fixed it up. When my eyesight returned, I watched her as she healed my hands, noticing that she was wearing both a blue and pink pendant around her neck. "You kept Sasuke's too?" I asked. She nodded. "I'll return it to him when he gets back." It had been a while since I'd thought about it. If he comes back to Konoha, what will happen? He's a wanted criminal. His escape has caused the death of many shinobi. "I don't think it's impossible," Sakura said. I was confused. Why? Sakura then dropped some big news on me. "When you were training, we received word that Sasuke had killed Orochimaru." I was shocked. "Killed Orochimaru?" She nodded. I thought about it. Wow, he must be powerful now. I doubt I could stop him at all. Sakura laughed. "Did you not see what you pulled off today? That was a village buster technique. I think you could be even more dangerous than Sasuke." I laughed cautiously. "Yeah." Sakura then told me how she meant to tell me earlier that my technique was considered a kinjutsu due to the self-destructive nature of it. It could burn and blind myself and any allies nearby if used incorrectly. Despite that, I was already finding ways to make use of it. A thinner barrel, more condensed chakra. All in all, I had taken a Ken into that fight when all I really needed was a Glock in most cases, so the concept of it being labeled as a kinjutsu seemed extreme. That variant at least. Depending on the target, I might be able to do more than just nuke something. I could turn it into a real sniper rifle if I calibrated the technique correctly. Finally finding my hands returning to normal, she told me to be careful moving forward. She had used my body's own cellular division to reform my skin and replace the dead cells, but she told me that the more I replaced dead cells, the lower my life expectancy would become. She told me to make it a real break glass in case of emergency technique, to which I heartily agreed. I highly doubted I'd need mountain killer level techniques for every shinobi I met. I'd proceed to make my way out and head home to rest for some time and think about it. For the first time in a while, I got to sleep in my own bed. Asuma had been avenged, and while I had just killed a man, I seemed to be okay with it. I realized a fundamental truth about pacifism. Pacifism was a trait I had always held, to do no real harm. to not kill, but it was flawed. A true pacifist was someone who realized what their pacifism was for, and for me, my control over my power was to preserve life. But if someone was an active threat to the lives of others, and if no other options were available, violence was an acceptable answer. I felt bad saying that, but justice and judgment came in many forms, and while I was truly in no position to judge any one person, if it came down to one person against 1,000, I would have to choose the 1,000. That was one of the tough choices one needed to make in the darkness of the shinobi world. I had to be strong. Strong enough to be gentle, yet tough enough to be dependable. Basically, I needed to be like my childhood hero, Optimus Prime. Not the Bayverse one, he's a psycho, but my point remained. This was how I processed this information. I simply had to tell myself that I didn't do anything wrong. Maybe I had, maybe I hadn't. I couldn't know for certain, but I knew my intentions, and I simply had to believe that I made a good choice killing Hidan. I cast up my cares to the one who cared most and tried to sleep. The next day, I awakened to someone pounding at my door. Stumbling out of bed, I made it out and opened it. On the other side, I saw Naruto standing there. "What is it?" I asked. He began talking so fast I couldn't understand him. "Calm down, Naruto. Slow down and just tell me what you need to tell me." Naruto took a deep breath. "We got a lead on Sasuke. He's looking for his brother right now. We know the general location." My eyes widened. I grabbed my flak jacket and my kunai holster and raced out the door. Naruto led me to Tsunade's office where a bunch of other shinobi were gathered. She welcomed me to the briefing and continued. She told us that the area near the Uchiha hideout was where Itachi had been spotted, and that Sasuke had been seen a good few miles out en route to his location. She surmised that if we were fast enough, we might intercept. She said that teams would search the surrounding area for any sign of Sasuke, and so that's exactly what we did. We raced through the forest, searching for Sasuke and his team, but we didn't get very far. That was until we both were caught by Itachi. Itachi looked at us. We both stopped and readied for battle. "Where's Sasuke?" Naruto asked. Itachi didn't speak or move. I then spoke. "Be honest with us. Are you even the real Itachi?" Itachi looked at us. "Perceptive. I like that." He smiled for a moment before returning to a more somber and serious face. "Let me ask you, what does Sasuke mean to you?" "He means the world to us," Naruto said. "Does he? What would you do to have him back?" "Anything," Naruto and I said in unison. Itachi shook his head. "Sadly, I don't believe you. What are you going to do if he turns on the village?" "I won't let him destroy Konoha," Naruto said. "Then you'll kill him?" Itachi asked. I looked at Naruto, and Naruto shook his head. "I would stop him and save Konoha, and then I'd save Sasuke too." Itachi smiled. "I like you." Suddenly, a crow flew down and lodged itself in Naruto's mouth. I gripped at its feet to try and pull it out, but it burrowed into his throat deeper before I could even get a grasp on it. "What did you do?" I shouted at Itachi, forming a miniature crystal Rasen rifle and pointing it at him. I gave him something that will help him make use of what he promised to do. "Farewell." "Wait!" Before I could finish my words, Itachi was gone. "We must be close," Naruto said as he cleared his throat after getting fed a chicken McNugget against his will. "Let's get going." We continued heading toward the Uchiha hideout, but were stopped by a masked man and a black and white being who refused to let us go any further. I formed a Rasen pistol in my hand and trained it on the masked man. "Ooh, shiny," he said as I readied my weapon. "Get out of our way. I don't want to use it against you," I told him. "And what if I said no?" the masked man asked. "Then I'll use this to make you get out of our way." "We won't let you hurt Sasuke," Naruto said. The masked man laughed. "Hurt Sasuke? Why would I do that? I simply wish to help Sasuke realize his goals, to get revenge on the ones responsible for killing his clan. All those responsible." Realizing that he was going to turn Sasuke against Konoha, I let off a shot in the man's direction. He caught it, however, in a strange swirling vortex, some space-time ninjutsu. He then released said jutsu at me from behind. Struck in the back by my own technique, I was sent flying forward, where the masked man would jump toward me, hitting me with some sort of lariat or clothesline or something. Definitely one of them wrestling moves. That being said, I was too disoriented to care about which it was. All I knew was that my back was burning, my collarbone felt broken, and now I flew into the bark of a tree, scraping my skin up before falling all the way down on my chest, reverberating through my ribs, likely cracking or breaking them, bubbling up through my organs. As I laid there, I tried to gauge the damage, but I couldn't focus enough to think what could be wrong, which itself was a sign of an issue. "Ethan!" Naruto shouted. I don't know what happened, but I heard someone else scream "bastard," yell, and then a thump beside me as Naruto fell over as well. Looking over, I wheezed as I turned onto my back. Looking at the tree above, I raised my arm and fired a blast, shredding the limb they were standing on. Of course, it didn't do anything but cause them a minor issue. That's when I realized my mistake. Gravity would pull the heavy limb back down to Earth, and currently I was laying between it and the Earth, so I was about to get struck by the most widow of all widowmakers. That was until Sakura came through and knocked it out of the way. She looked down at me. "You okay?" I smiled. "Am I about to be in the hospital again?" She smiled a little back and nodded. At about that time, the skies darkened and a loud peal of thunder echoed through the area. After that, we didn't see the masked man or the strange black and white creature. "Sasuke's at the Uchiha hideout," I said. Sakura told over the radio where to go. I told her that she should go too. Unable to resist, she ran after Sasuke to get him and called in medical nin to our location. Sadly, they never found Sasuke, only the corpse of Itachi, already lacking eyes. It was a letdown indeed, and knowing Sasuke wasn't there, I knew it could only mean one thing. The Akatsuki had taken him, and sooner rather than later, he would target Konoha. The hospital trip was short. Getting out of the building, I sighed to myself, thinking about how old this was getting. Going to the hospital to be treated, only to go out immediately, get trounced, and be sent back. But alas, we were here. I thought about Itachi's actions, how he seemed to show genuine care for his little brother. I began to wonder what it all meant. Perhaps we had gotten Itachi wrong somehow. He seemed to be genuinely trying to give Sasuke a second chance. That being said, scans of Naruto's chest didn't show any sign of a crow, so that was creepy. But all in all, everything seemed to be okay. So he was let out as well, both Naruto and me contemplating the meaning of Itachi's actions together. In the end, neither of us had a clue. No true clue as to what it all meant. We couldn't exactly reach any conclusions. We felt like we were missing a very important part of this story. So as we walked down the street, we decided to head to the Hokage's office to discuss all of this with Tsunade. Only she could answer what the masked man meant by realizing all of those responsible for the Uchiha's deaths. As we entered the building, we went to the reception area where Shizune was along with Tonton. Every time I saw this happy little pig, my heart leapt. "Hi Shizune," I called out. "And a hearty hello to you, Tonton," I said while poking at the piggy a little. The piggy did not seem to be in a good mood. Looking up, I noticed that Shizune also seemed to be in a foul mood. "Something the matter? You two are here sooner than I expected. How much do you know?" I looked at Naruto and then back at her. "No. Well, we were coming to ask what Konoha might have had to do with the Uchiha massacre." Shizune's face seemed understanding, though it was no less grave. "I think you should speak with Lady Tsunade." She began to lead us up. By this time, Naruto and I were starting to grow a bit concerned. Something was off, and I had a foreboding feeling deep in the pit of my stomach. Something was wrong. Entering the Hokage's office, I saw quite a few people there. Sakura was there, Kakashi was there, even Fukasaku. "Grand Hop," I said with a slowly growing grin. I rushed over to him and picked him up to give him a hug. Shizune and Tsunade were startled. "Put him down! He's a venerated sage among toads." "It's fine, Lady Tsunade," Fukasaku said. "This one's a good one." "You know this old toad?" Naruto asked. I looked back. "Know him? More than that, he's family. When you and Jiraiya were hurt during training, Fukasaku and Shima took care of me. I signed a contract with them. They're more than friends to me, they're family." I gave him a kiss on the cheek and then sat him back down before gleefully making my way back to Naruto, forgetting the gravity of the situation in the room. "So, we were here to talk about the Uchiha clan's massacre." Tsunade looked at Shizune and then back to us. "We'll get to that at a later time. There's something important." Fukasaku turned around and raised his cloak. I let out a gasp to see markings scarred into his back. "Hop Hop, who did this to you?" Tsunade answered. "This was an urgent message from Jiraiya. It's in a code we can't decipher. We need you to do so." "Well, why don't you just let Pervy Sage do it himself when he gets back?" Naruto asked. The mood grew darker. Naruto seemed to be catching on quicker than I. With Tonton present, along with my venerated grandfather, all I could think of was how happy I was. That's when Tsunade began to speak. "Naruto, Ethan, Fukasaku held up his hand. "I'll say it, Lady Tsunade. These boys are more in my domain." He waved us both closer. I knelt down beside the frog alongside Naruto. Fukasaku came forward, his hand reaching out to our faces. "Naruto, Ethan, Jiraiya died in battle." I felt my chest suddenly tighten. Naruto would speak. "What?" Fukasaku would begin to talk. "Jiraiya was sent to investigate the Akatsuki while you were gone. He went to Amigakure to find the leader. We found him. He killed Jiraiya before he could say anything." Naruto shook his head. "You're wrong." Fukasaku shook his head. "I'm not, Naruto. I was there. I saw it happen. On my back are the last words ever left by Jiraiya boy, and I think he left them for the two of you." Naruto was unable to understand it all. I, on the other hand, was already crying. Please, tell me it's not true. Fukasaku hugged me to bring me comfort, but I was destroyed. Years of my life were spent with Jiraiya. Some of the best times I had ever had were in his house, helping him, playing with him in Naruto, training, exchanging stories, forging new ones. Kakashi came up behind me and put his hand on my shoulder. Turning to the man I saw as a father, I buried my head in his lap. He pat my back. I looked up at him. I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei. I know I'm not supposed to cry like this, I said between bouts of heaving, but I can't help it. I love Jiraiya, and now he's gone. Not forever, Ethan, Fukasaku said. A piece of him lives on in you, and the both of you, more than you know. You two are the closest thing he ever had to children. As I cried about it, I felt as if my heart that had been soaring moments ago had been thrown, shattered against the wall. My body shook, unable to translate all of this information at once. Fukasaku looked at us. Boys, I need you to look at this message, please. It's very important. Naruto looked at it, but he wasn't sure what it meant. There was nothing striking to him, just a bunch of random numbers. I looked back. That one's not a number, I pointed. That's a kana. It means ta. They looked at each other in shock. I continued as I tried wiping my eyes. Jiraiya had a funny way of writing. His handwriting was different, simple. He didn't like to waste time on a written draft. A written draft, Tsunade asked. She looked at the others. I nodded. I helped write his last book, Icha Tactics. Tsunade pulled out the book and looked. Wait, Kaiteki is your pseudonym? I nodded. When Jiraiya hit a roadblock, I helped them write. A couple of the chapters in there are mine completely. I thought I felt something different in these chapters, Kakashi said. He pulled the book out and began looking through it. Ethan, this message, Tsunade said. This message Jiraiya left for you. The answer must be in that book. She looked over. What could the numbers mean, though? I looked. Page numbers, lines, word placements. He's speaking using the book. We can work with this, Shiho said. They took Kakashi's book downstairs for analysis. In the end, they returned with the answer. The real one is not among them, Shiho said. Does anyone know what that means? Fukasaku thought about it. Jiraiya boy was attacked by 6 different warriors, all claiming to be Pain. Tsunade thought about it. Then there must have been a 7th member in hiding. The real Pain. With this information cracked, we were dismissed. I was still distraught, though my tears seemed to have stopped flowing. Me and Naruto just walked about for a time, speaking about our old mentor and having a couple popsicles together of the blue raspberry variety, Jiraiya's favorite. I ate mine, enjoying the flavor, and I noticed Naruto's was dripping onto the ground. Naruto, you'd better hurry and eat that, or it'll melt. That's when I noticed. The popsicle had yet to start melting. I looked up and saw Naruto's eyes overflowing with tears. His body had finally finished parsing this information, and now all that was going to be left was the hurting. My eyes welled up in sorrow as I hugged him. Naruto, it's going to be okay. The next day, we were called back to Tsunade's office. There, we saw Fukasaku and Shima. Hi, Hop Hop. Hi, Gran, I said, trying to disguise my pain. He looks worse off than you, Shima told her husband. Fukasaku nodded. Jiraiya boy left a hole in everyone's hearts. Fukasaku then spoke to us. Did Jiraiya ever teach either of you Sage Mode? I raised my hand, but Naruto didn't. Fukasaku looked at Naruto. I'm going to teach you as I taught Jiraiya boy. Naruto didn't seem very grateful, but Fukasaku ignored this. Shima looked to me. And since you already know Ethan, you and me will just spend time together. Just us. Shima, deep down, knew that I shouldn't be alone at the moment. I was hurting too much. So as Naruto went off to train, Shima and I spent time doing what we did best. As we continued, Shima spoke. You know, I read some of what you wrote. While what Jiraiya wrote never really did appeal to me, I can't deny that you have the skills to become an author just like Jiraiya did. Your imagination is fantastic. That's why I think you should do something. She offered me a book. This is the original book Jiraiya wrote. I picked it up. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Shima then spoke. Jiraiya never had what it took to make this book go far, but I think that you could read it over and help the tale move. You could be the living legacy for Jiraiya, passing on his stories to the next generation. Like him, you're a storyteller. I can see it in your eyes. It brings you joy. This is your calling. As I looked at the book, I smiled. I'll do everything I can to keep his memory alive through my writing. And so for about a week, I spent time reading over the book, as well as cross-referencing some of the techniques and tactics within to various shinobi guides. I was amazed at how much realism was packed into it, and I began to wonder if that's why it didn't work. It was written about a world war during an age of a world war, with realism. Most people tended to take stories like this to escape their day-to-day lives, yet this book was more of a reminder. I began to think that it would sell better in today's market than the era it was from. In that way, I decided not to change it. Instead, I would expand upon the universe he had formed with expanded works, sequels, and spin-offs. And as such, I began working. But I didn't have much time to work. As I was spending my time writing these stories, I was lost to myself. Shima was happy that my mind was off my pain. That was her intention all along. But all the same, the ground began to shake, pulling me back into the real world. I stood. What's that? Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind blew through, bursting my windows. The entire apartment was coming down. I turned around, grabbed Shima, and raced for the door. As the apartment was collapsing behind me, I burst through the door and jumped from where I was to the ground. I landed skillfully and made my way to an open area where we could hide and not be crushed. When the attack passed, I peeked over the top, through the dust and dirt kicked up by the attack. I stepped out from behind cover, Shima on my shoulder. I couldn't see anything but brown. But as the air settled and the contents of the blast returned to the ground, I saw everything. And by everything, well, I mean nothing. Konoha was devastated. A single attack to shatter everything. Konoha was under attack? For how long? I asked. I'd been so absorbed by my work that I didn't even notice it. I raced out there to see many people dead. People I knew. I couldn't stop to mourn. I needed to save lives. Getting there, I noticed the one hovering in the air. I called out to him. Hey, you! Shima then cautioned me. She told me to make a few shadow clones. I did, and as asked, I hid them away somewhere. She would then fill myself and my clones with nature energy, allowing us to enter Sage Mode. Shima then said that she was going to go get help. She used reverse summoning to go get Naruto and the others. I formed my Rasen pistol. I held my arm up and fired a chakra blast. The shot ricocheted off of Pain's open hand. He slowly lowered to the ground. I don't suppose you know where to find the Ninetales, do you? I raised an eyebrow. Now, why would I know where to find that? Or perhaps the question to ask is what you plan to do with it if you get it? Pain raised his hand. It would be a waste to tell you. You won't be alive long enough to enjoy it. He fired a blast at me, sending me flying backward. I pulled a kunai and dug it into the ground. This guy was strong. Stronger than anything I had ever faced. He so casually, without even so much as a care in the world, without even breaking a sweat, flicked our little village off the face of the planet. Such power. For me to even generate anything close to that, I had to burn myself out. But I disregarded the gap in power. I couldn't think about that right now. I had to face off against him. If I didn't beat him here, or at least stall him long enough for Shima to get back, all would be lost. Returning my kunai to its sheath, I formed from my crystals a shield and a double-edged sword. Like a knight ready for battle, I got into a lower stance to hide behind my shield, sword poking out over the top, ready to slice and dice. The Diva Path formed chakra rods and began to fire them at me. I drew closer still, my shield up, catching all of the rods. One struck hard enough to punch a hole through my shield, stopping only inches from my face. It was serious now. I rushed in with my sword and began swinging at Pain, only for Pain to form a chakra rod in his hand to catch my blade. Pulling the rod and my shield free, Pain began dual-wielding, swinging both at me quickly. His kenjutsu was well above mine, and with the strength of his strikes, every time he struck at me, I felt my shield and sword crack more. I tried to step between his attacks in the hopes that him missing an attack might create an opening. And it did, but he had two swords, so the only thing I could do was a perfect counter. I stepped into his opening, causing him to launch a counter-strike with his blade. I parried it with my shield, causing him to be pushed off kilter. As he was trying to recover his balance, I stepped in with a sword strike. However, he allowed himself to fall back to avoid my shot. Now I was open. With a single flick of his hand, I was sent upward into the air. I tumbled as my body went at least 15 feet. As I began to fall, I quickly coated myself in crystal armor to take most of the shot. Standing up, I formed two Rasen pistols and began to rush around him, firing blasts. I fired as fast as I could. He couldn't block them all. A few he reflected back at me, but with the shape and construction of my own armor, each blast would be deflected without trying. Pain, on the other hand, was forced to take more shots than he wanted to. Grabbing up his chakra rods once again, he began catching each blast with his rods before flinging one of them at me, powering it with the almighty push. The rod pierced my armor and entered the meat of my shoulder. I grunted and pulled it out quickly, throwing it on the ground. No matter what I did, this guy was ready with a counter. I would put my two Rasen pistols together to form a Rasen rifle, and I'd charge up as much chakra as I could. I'd fire at Pain. Pain saw it coming, but had no way of stopping it. But at that moment, the Predapath appeared, and put its hands out to shield Pain. It absorbed as much of the blast as it could, but the force of my shot was enough to completely eradicate Preda, and leave Diva wounded. I fell to my knees, arms in agonizing pain. Blood dripped out of my rifle as I knelt there. Pain looked up at me. Impressive. I thought I sensed something different about you. Perhaps we're not as unalike as we think. I'm nothing like you, I shouted at Pain. Pain nodded. That's true, but we share a common link in Jiraiya, it seems. I looked at Pain in shock. What? Pain would stand. Too bad. I might have liked to know you better. Pity you'll die here. From behind me, the Ashura Path grabbed my shoulder. A sharp, pointed drill formed out of its hands and pushed the tip through me. The drill spun fast enough that it broke my armor and pierced my heart like butter. It was at about that point that Naruto arrived with Fukasaku and Shima. Shima saw this, as did Naruto, who screamed in rage. Shima came to my side. Ethan, you're okay. Keep looking at me. I tried, but things were going dark. It felt cold. Slowly, feeling fell entirely from me. I lost sight, then hearing, then feeling. I fell into a black abyss, and as I floated across the darkness, I saw a light. Within that light, I found comfort and peace. I felt two hands upon me. In that moment, I was but a child again. Young and upset, but looking up, I saw a man and a woman, both shinobi, both strong, both wearing the headband of a village I never knew. A village that had long since been destroyed by Orochimaru. I witnessed the past. I witnessed how Orochimaru destroyed the village for shunning one of his new subordinates, and I saw my parents fight to save the village, dying at his hand. I was then sent to Konoha to live, where I remained orphaned. They hugged me close. You did well, Ethan. We're so proud of you. Mama, Papa. Tears of joy spilled from my eyes. They weren't the only ones here. I saw the faces of those I had lost. Shikamaru, Kiba, and Akamaru, dear friends from my past. I saw Haku, and even Zabuza was there, having found forgiveness in the end. Hiruzen was there, and last but not least, I saw Jiraiya. He drew closer. My parents moved to the side and let me hug him. I cried into his shoulder. Gone was the child I'd been in my parents' arm. Now was the man Jiraiya had made me. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to avenge you, I said. Jiraiya smiled. I never wanted you to avenge me, Ethan. I wiped my eyes. You didn't? No. I wanted you to forgive Nagato. I wanted you to be happy, to continue our work. You write so well. You have a gift I could never find in myself. I wanted you to write stories about us, about you, me, and Naruto. It's too late now, I said. Pain killed me too. Jiraiya shook his head. No, it's not. I believe in Naruto, and I believe in who Nagato truly is. You'll return soon, and when you do, promise me that you'll use your words to show the world how valuable they really are. Bring peace through the love you convey and the passion of your writing. Forge unity with those who have hurt each other and themselves. Heal. That's your gift, Ethan. Words. They can cut deeper than any sword, and they can pierce even the deepest armor. Wield your pen to strike at the darkness in hearts, and free the light. Free people from their chains, and tell them that they have the thing they believe they didn't. And what's that? I asked. What's the thing they need? Jiraiya smiled and kissed my forehead. Love. That's what Icha Icha was all about. Perhaps the overtones were too strong, but deep down, the story was about a shinobi who loved everyone deeply and sought a way to translate that to them. I smiled. I could always tell. Jiraiya hugged me. That's your mission. When you get back, tell everyone that they're loved. Let go of their hatred. Discard the natural hatred and embrace the supernatural love. Can you promise me? Promise me to try. I nodded my head. I promise. Jiraiya ruffled my hair. Good man. I'll be watching you always. No matter what happens, how you live your life, what you do with the gifts you have. Our love is with you always. In that moment, I saw all those who had passed on gathering together as one. They smiled at me with love. I was able to smile once more at them before suddenly I felt something. As if a cable were attached to my waist, I was jerked backwards, back through the abyss. In that moment, I opened my eyes and gasped for air. Sakura saw it, tears in her eyes. She hugged me. She had been holding me ever since. What happened? I asked. She spoke. Naruto defeated pain. I sat there for a moment, body still aching from the pain it had gone through. My arms. Naruto would eventually show up again, running to me and hugging me. Ethan, I'm so glad you're okay. Rebuilding the village was tough, as was the process of healing, but it eventually would be finished. The 5 Kage summit would begin, Danzo taking his role as Hokage in the wake of Tsunade's coma. Sakura remained by her side the whole time. As she did, Sakura and I talked. We talked about Sasuke, about how news had come through that he had thrown in with the Akatsuki, and now he was seeking to destroy the village. Sakura said she'd decided to kill Sasuke and was heading out to finish it. I tried to stop her, but she left anyway. Naruto too had left. As the hero of the village, he was celebrated, going from being the most hated individual to being the most loved. It seemed as though his dream was a success. Everything he wanted from being a shinobi was now his. For what reason should he continue to seek being Hokage? I asked him that question once, and he told me that just because he was a respected shinobi didn't mean he wanted to stop trying to become Hokage. He said he wanted to be the most respected. He wanted to prove himself the strongest, and he wanted to care for the village he loved. And for the sake of love, he too left for the land of iron where the 5 Kage were gathered. With Naruto gone to rescue Sasuke and Sakura gone to kill him, I was at a crossroads. Which of my friends would I choose? Should I choose Sakura, kill Sasuke to save the village? Or should I risk the village and all the lives therein to save Sasuke? My mind told me Sakura was right, but my heart allied with Naruto. Thinking deeply about it, I would head off for the land of iron. As I walked, I thought about Sasuke and what he'd gone through, as well as what Itachi had said. I decided not to doubt the mission. I would join up with Naruto. Catching up, I joined him as he escaped to find Sasuke on his own. We traveled deeper until we reached where Sakura had been heading. It seemed as though there had been a battle. Danzo Shimura, the acting Hokage, was dead. Standing above him was Sasuke. It had been so long since I'd seen Sasuke. He looked so different. He seemed colder, like his soul was no longer in his body. And at this moment, he was planning to kill Sakura. Naruto launched himself forward and rescued her, accidentally nicking himself on the poisoned blade she was carrying. Naruto quickly began to lose strength and was becoming a sitting duck. I had to intervene. Before Sasuke could strike Naruto and Sakura again, I tackled him off the bridge. We landed in the water below. Sasuke gave me the coldest glare. The glare of death. "You shouldn't be here," he said. I shook my head. "I've been searching for you forever." Sasuke then elaborated. "No, I mean you shouldn't be here. You were never supposed to be on our team. This doesn't include you. Butt out." Standing there, I tried to understand. "Sasuke, you were once willing to leave Team 7 for me. You and I lived and died together for a long time. We have a powerful bond. I can't just throw that away. You can't just throw us away." "I already have. I killed you in my heart. I now no longer have any feelings toward you. Continue to stand in my way and be killed in reality too." "So what?" I asked. "You killed Danzo. You killed Itachi. Is that not enough for you? Have you not shed enough blood? Come home." Sasuke refused. "Not until the entire village is dead, and you along with it." He pulled his sword. "Sasuke, you've changed." I entered Sage mode. Looking forward, I saw his eyes had become Mangekyo Sharingan. "You've been hurt," I said to him. "I don't want that for you. You're walking down a path that will do nothing but hurt you more. I won't let you, even if that means beating some sense into you." Sasuke laughed. "Then by all means, try." I formed a crystal sword to match Sasuke's. We rushed at each other. In the time that had passed since pain, I'd further worked on my Kenjutsu, studying sword techniques and various forms of arts, but Sasuke seemed to be on a different level, likely afforded to him by his Sharingan. Our blades clashed. I sensed him gather chakra to his Mangekyo Sharingan. I wasn't sure what he was doing, so I dodged to the side just quickly enough to see the water behind me burst into flames. Something that seemed like an impossibility. That told me everything I needed to know about this attack. Sasuke once again tried to use it on me. I quickly formed a crystal mirror. As I did, the reflection of Sasuke appeared in the mirror at the focal point of Sasuke's vision, causing him to accidentally cast a Amaterasu on himself. Sasuke's body was set ablaze with the black flame. He let out a cry before using Kagutsuchi to remove the flame from him. Sasuke would then utilize his Susanoo to attack me, forming a massive chakra avatar that consisted of about the upper body of a creature, no more, no less. Sasuke began shooting chakra arrows, each one massively stronger than any blast my Rasen pistol could pull off. It made me think that my Rasen rifle could work, but I had yet to perfect it to the point that I could use it without hurting my arms, not to mention that a blast like that might kill Sasuke, which wasn't my intent. So I tried dodging, using a mirror as a shield. Getting close, I was struck by Sasuke's Susanoo, sending me flying into a wall. I left a crater in the stone. I saw Sasuke targeting me again with his crossbow. I got up and began running up the wall to avoid the blasts. As I ran, I cut my thumb on a blade and then jumped up the wall, planting my hand on the ground. I summoned Gamabunta, who jumped out of the wall, dagger cutting through Sasuke's bolt. I knew Sasuke would try Amaterasu again, so I began weaving hand signs. On the fly, I formed a new variant of a technique. Crystal release, demonic mirroring jade crystals, Centurion shield. Suddenly, I formed a bunch of large jade mirrors that then connected together to form a larger shield. It was enough to counter Sasuke's Amaterasu again, but this time Sasuke left his Susanoo on fire, using Kagutsuchi to stop the flames. The flames left Sasuke's Susanoo nigh impenetrable. Nothing we had could pierce it without being burned to nothingness. At about this point, it became a battle of attrition, one that I and Gamabunta did eventually win. Sasuke's eyesight had deteriorated so much that he was nearly blind from the overuse of his Mangekyo. He would declare that this wasn't over and leave. Naruto would be cured by Sakura and we'd meet up again with the others. As it turned out, the 4th Shinobi World War was declared. Kakashi was quickly named 6th Hokage. Tsunade would soon wake up as well to help coordinate, but Naruto and I would be sent away. Naruto was told he needed to train, and I was told I needed to help him. The true purpose of this was to keep Naruto out of the war and have me distract him. On the boat ride there, I began to work on my own personal project. I started working on writing an autobiography on myself, my experiences, and the people around me. It was hard to concentrate on the boat, particularly as I grew seasick. Then there was the sea monster attack and the ghost ship, but I was too nauseous to really participate much in those, and even if I could, I certainly didn't remember enough to tell anyone. We eventually made it to the shore of the Turtle Island, where we would stay for some time. Naruto would indeed train, and I would write. But as I was taking a break, I decided to watch Naruto. I sat before a waterfall. I asked Killer B, the one in charge of training Naruto, what he was doing, and Killer B explained the falls to me. He told me that the falls knew how to see inside of us and tell us who we truly were. Naruto seemed to smile as the falls parted and allowed him in. He'd passed the test. I watched Naruto and B enter the cave behind it. Curious, I decided to sit down by the falls. That's when I was confronted by the darkest part of myself. It began to walk around me as it spoke. "You're so weak," it said. "You know, it's your fault that Sasuke left in the first place. If only you'd been strong enough to stop him." "It wasn't my fault," I said. The vision stopped in front of me and looked eye to eye. "You can't lie to me, Ethan. You can't lie to me because I'm you. The true you. The honest you. The you who knows that he can't stay out of the hospital to save his life. The you who blames himself for letting Asuma die. The you that blames himself for Hiruzen, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Jiraiya's death. The you that has always had to defer to Naruto when the village needs strength. Pain killed you. You only killed one of the paths. Even Konohamaru did that. Naruto killed 4 and then confronted the true pain. You're just weak, and you're dragging everyone else down." I listened to the mirror image talk. Its words hurt, and I felt they were true, but all the same I responded. "I may be weak, but I learn from my mistakes. There are things I wish I could have done differently, and now it's too late. But because I have the courage to fail, I gain the will to succeed. So yes, I am a failure, and that's okay. I don't need to be perfect. I just gotta fail over and over and over again until I eventually get it right. I can only fail so many times before I succeed." And with that, the darkness went away. I had been struggling with my strength, but accepting the fact that it was okay that I wasn't some super big hero was enough. I just needed to help Naruto get where he was going. If I could do that, I was fine being a screw-up. I headed in and enjoyed the carvings on the wall. Naruto and B had locked themselves up for training, but before anyone knew, the door opened, and Naruto exited with B. Naruto looked astonishing, wearing a golden cloak about him. He was in his Nine-Tails chakra mode, and he informed me about the war. We would begin heading off toward the war, despite others attempting to stop us. Getting closer, we'd be stopped by Tsunade and the Raikage, who told us to turn around, but after some debate, they would let us go forward. As we did, we tried to help out the best we could. We would eventually be attacked by Itachi and Nagato as Ito Tensei, but at that moment, the crow Naruto had swallowed would exit his mouth and cast Koto Amatsukami on Itachi, freeing him from Kabuto's control. Itachi would seal away Nagato with his Susanoo, and would then leave to stop Kabuto. Naruto would eventually help weed out the imposters among us in the camp of the allied shinobi forces. It was then that we were drawn into the final battle. The 10 Tails had appeared. It turned out that the reason they were gathering the 9 beasts was to awaken a monster known as the 10 Tails, and it seemed that they now had enough. With the 8 Tails tentacle and the 9 Tails chakra that had been consumed by the Gold and Silver brothers, the masked man was able to awaken the 10 Tails. We attempted to face him, but as we attacked, we learned that we were not able to even touch him. That was until Kakashi's Kamui allowed us to surpass the dimensional barrier to wound him. But by the time we formulated a strategy around that, the masked man, who was now revealed to be Obito Uchiha, would absorb the 10 Tails. As it turned out, Sage Jutsu could not be countered by Obito's truth-seeking orbs, so I would pour on the heavy fire, distracting him. Then, when Naruto and Sasuke teamed up against Obito, I shared some of my energy with them in the hopes of helping them defeat him, which they did. But sadly, even though Obito was defeated, the war was not over. Madara Uchiha, who had been in Ito Tensei, was now fully resurrected by Zetsu, and he proceeded to once again capture every tailed beast, including the one within Naruto. With Naruto and Sasuke both wounded to the point of death, I knew I had to do something. I watched the final battle between Might Guy and Madara claimed Guy to be the strongest even though Guy had lost. I saw how much damage Guy had done to him, and I knew that that meant Madara could be killed. That's when I came up with a plan. I entered Sage Mode and made the largest Rasen rifle I ever had, one that I named Rasen Cannon. I'd begin forming a massive Rasengan within it. To give it more energy, I would call back all of my shadow clones that I'd been building Sage Chakra with. As I did so, I felt as though my body was steadily turning into a toad. I needed to be quick if I were to survive. I lined up the shot. With everything I could, I fired a single blast so powerful that it seemed to shake the continent. The blast was so loud, the flash so bright that my eardrums burst, and my eyes were singed to the point no light could be seen in them anymore. The blast was so hot I felt my own body burning. I felt it traveling up my arms until slowly that pain faded. The blast traveled across the battlefield. Please, let this work, I thought. Madara saw it and cried out against it. He covered himself in all of the truth-seeking orbs he could, but the very force of my blast was too much. He was eaten up by it. As I fell back, unable to see or hear, I could barely feel anything, but I could sense that Kakashi was near me. A few moments later, I was touched by Naruto, who used his 6 paths power to heal my eyes and ears, as well as most of my flesh. But as I looked down, I noticed my arms were gone, completely incinerated by the Rasen Cannon. But thankfully, I had killed Madara, or so I thought. There was a commotion. It seemed that before the blast hit, in a last-ditch effort to save himself, Madara had thrown away from himself a single finger. That finger was now regenerating into a full body. Weakened, yes, but a full body all the same. It seemed that all hope was lost. But then Sasuke showed up. I watched as he and Naruto fought against Madara. Madara almost seemed to have the edge until he activated the infinite Tsukiyomi. We were all then cast into Genjutsu. But as I came to know later, Madara had been overtaken by Kaguya Otsutsuki, and a greater battle was taking place. I, on the other hand, was left in a dream. A dream where I was constantly popping off best-selling novels left and right, studying under Jiraiya and living a peaceful life. But eventually, with the defeat of Kaguya and the defeat of Sasuke, with Naruto pulling him back to the light, the Tsukiyomi came to an end. Freed, I awakened to the pain of my lost arms. The war was over, and we were victorious. I came to realize that I wasn't the only one who lost an arm that day. Sasuke and Naruto both had lost their dominant arms. Returning to the village though, Naruto and I were treated by Tsunade, with Sasuke electing to remain amputated. We were given new arms, made from the cells of Hashirama Senju. They felt and functioned just as our original arms had. It was an odd thing to get used to, as I had to relearn everything all over again, but I eventually managed to get back to writing, and when I did, I finished my autobiography. That autobiography is what you're experiencing now. Whether in the form of a book or a narrated movie, this is the tale of the second utterly gutsy shinobi, Ethan. A proud shinobi of Konoha, student to Jiraiya, and author of many stories enjoyed by all the villagers of Konoha. I'm glad you all went on this journey with me. And a special thanks to all of those who brought me to where I am now, both living and dead alike. Thank you for making me the man and the shinobi I am today. And that's the end of our story. I hope you enjoyed it. I truly wanted to know what could happen if I were there. And to be there, I needed it to be realistic. I tried to follow my own personality as well as make use of the small gift that I have been given in the form of my Gekkai Genkai. Something to prove that Naruto was right. Even weaker shinobi can become great. They don't need a special birthright. Hard work, perseverance, and a creative mind are all that's required to turn the fantasy of powerful techniques into the reality of ninjutsu. But what did you think about the story? Did you like it? If so, tell us about it in the comments. Tell us what your favorite parts were. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bells to be notified when more videos like this are released. And if you want to see more great videos from our channel, try these on the screen now. I'm sure you'll love them. Anyway, until next time, peace out.